Hello, and this is BFP Travels, a special edition show for BFP Imagineering Channel. Um, I'm Phil, your conductor of this journey, you can say, and Florentin is as well, and Braylon is
Hey, hey,
here as well. But if Braylon wants to be a conductor,
Hey,
he can be, and Florentin can be a conductor, so can he, because we all always know that I am the map, so
yes, you are, good sir. Yes, you
I,
are.
I am the GPS. So
Yes, and you do a fantastic job at that, good sir.
yes, even though I could not find any parking spot in
and when
Indianapolis.
it comes to BFP Imagineering, we are each conductors at different times. So depending on
Yes,
what project we're doing, uh, one of us can turn out to be the conductor for that project. Where meanwhile another project, whoa, so another one, a different one of us is the conductor. So it's
I think that's
unknown,
I think that's a
which is
fabulous point
amazing.
that you. I think that's a fabulous point that you bring up. Of we love to we love to have our moments of conducting each other, but we also love surprising each other too. It's like, oh, you are despicable. Like we love doing that to each other. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I think that
But what I
fuels the
found very, yeah, what I found a respect, what I found even more amazing is we're not like fighting and competing, and we're like, oh, I'm gonna get you like next time. Like some competition or some shows, like people are like that. Like free people are like competing or the challenge. But we're different. We're honest here. So if Phil sees that if Phil sees like one of us is doing amazing, like he'll he want to take a step back and he want to retool his. And just like when you guys did the Animal Kingdom, like it was not my zone, and I just backed out, and if it's not my if I cannot be if it's not my expertise and
right.
it's not my expertise, then I went focusing on an Australian area for Animal Kingdom, and you
Yes.
guys nailed it. So
Well,
Indeed.
you're very kind to say that, but also too, even within that you pulled back, you were still game to see what was
mm,
created. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the joy about us is that we are genuinely excited to be doing what we're doing and talking about theme parks and talking about the what if of theme parks. It's a very unique
well,
combination that
yeah, I actually did the Happy Feet and Ice Age, and it turned out similar to yours. It turned out
yes.
similar to yours, but for that one, I think Phil was the conductor for sure.
Yes. Oh my God. I keep telling you that Tundra. Oh my God.
Oh,
And how it connected back to Expedition Everest was brilliant.
Yeah, because you have Expedition Everest to your left, and I mean to your right. When you're in the tundra land, I mean,
mm.
it's perfect. You
Yeah.
I
got the
think we just I
Mhm.
think we're true to what our heart's telling us. So when we did the Epcot resort, we were all going to go the same route and all do the same Epcot resort across from World Drive. But then I did a great exterior one, and Phil thought it was amazing. But my heart was telling me I want to do an Epcot resort. I want to do an Epcot entrance resort. So I just stayed true to my heart, and my if and that's the right way to approach with
Oh,
where your
for sure.
heart yeah, that's because otherwise if you don't have the heart for it, you're not gonna have the see again, if you don't have the heart for it, you're not gonna have the best potential or the best heart into your craft. So
Oh, I fully agree with that. And not to mention too, like we are never so tight on the rules where we can't explore. Like even with that Epcot resort, like Florentin went a completely different direction, and I went a completely different direction, but it still came out great. Like being able to have your own mind does lead to great creativity. Um,
Mhm. But I
because
think that's the point, that we showcase three different concepts, and they're all three very different. Because I'm not gonna say mine was well, I'm not gonna say which one was the best, but I always go back and I love the name Osmopolitan, and yours is, and there's no competition again. Yours is like the Walt experimental
yeah,
prototype city of tomorrow, which
yes,
Epcot really was supposed to be that direction. Mine was
right.
the Epcot entrance, which was the Epcot in the reality and what you can add onto it. And I look forward to seeing a different design from Phil. So
Yeah,
uh so
and not to mention
mhm.
too, I think what we also do is we never do anything that we can't find the ancient reality. When I did the Cosmopolitan Hotel, I was like, okay, well, since we can't create Epcot right in real life, can we at least take one thing from Walt Disney and make it a reality to honor him? And that's where that came from. And I'm like, that hotel can still be built to this day, but you needed you need a plussing to that. Um, and you think about the movie Robots, and God rest his soul, Robin Williams, and the brilliance of that film. I was like, this concept makes sense. Um, and listen, if any one of our concepts ever actually came into real life, it would be a win for us. I mean, if Disney said we're going to build a Epcot entrance hotel, I clapping it up. If they did a haunted mansion hotel, I would be clapping it up. If Disney decides to do a partnership with PlayStation to bring PlayStation games into the parks, I will be clapping it up because those are
Now
all
I
things
will
that we
say
have.
that, yeah. I will say Epcot entrance hotel is a big feat. Is a big feat because you have to build something that would represent, in a way, a brand new entrance to Epcot, and you have to build something that is front facing of Spaceship Earth. You don't want to block Spaceship Earth. But when you build an Epcot resort like that is not on property of the park, which is across from World Drive or next door to it, then you can it doesn't have it's not a giant feat, because you can make it inspired by Epcot, you can make it representing Epcot, but to make an entrance resort, that's a big feat.
Yes.
It has to be, incredible. It has to be, yeah. Space of Earth is the best entrance, but like if you think about putting a resort like in front of it, like I just did it and saw. I just did it and just went through, like, okay, I just rode the ride. So I think that's what's exciting about it, is riding the ride and not knowing that's what is intriguing about it. That's the wondering about it.
Yes. I agree with that. So what is the journey we're going on tonight? I see the Earth. I hope we have enough oxygen because we are out in the middle of all this
Yes, yes,
of
indeed.
all this space. So hopefully we can get back to Earth very quickly, virtually, of course, everybody.
Hmm. Yes, like I said, welcome, and we are going to a random place in on Earth, and we could stop at one place and stay there, or we could go to another place and be there. when I was with Florentine. We went from New York City when we went to London, went back to New York City, and then we went briefly to Walt Disney World to talk about Venice, and then we ended up in Venice. So, um, once again, we'll see. Hold on to your seats. Get your seatbelt as we are going to go on down to Earth right now.
Again, Paul Tremaine takes the microphone with his orchestra. Another of his spirituals and dance rhythm. Is there a place up there for me?
And we are looking to city of that has a metro of 9 million people. The largest city.
So we are in big old sweet home Chicago.
I ain't been sleeping well at all. I dreamt I had a great big fall. I fell right in the
There.
Chicago.
Yes, indeed. Sweet home, sweet home, sweet home, Chicago.
Oh my goodness. And we could tease with Florentine for not knowing who might have sung Sweet Home Chicago. That's so you know what I mean. That's a blues song.
Sweet home in Chicago.
Barack Obama actually sung that. I'm like, you know what? Barack could have did an album.
Oh.
He actually had a decent voice when he sung that.
Breaking news.
The Windy City. The Windy City.
Breaking news from Chicago, guys. Breaking news.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, for all the Harry Potter fans, there is the world's largest Harry Potter Chicago store there for you if you did not know that.
Mhm. Yes.
This is where the Disney magic was born. I mean, the tree in the front yard quite literally holds the dreams and goals of children who have visited here. But really, the house as a whole is a symbol of how ordinary people can do extraordinary things.
This is the room where Walt Disney was born.
For just $800, his father built the house.
They sang and played and entertained.
And Walt filled it with magic.
Walt Disney was an example that, you know, if you come from humble beginnings, if you work hard, if you follow your dreams, you can change the world.
In 1901, Walt Disney was born in this very room, the two-story house in the Hermosa neighborhood. And for the first time, the magical place is now open to the public. Ray Colon, the project director of the Walt Disney birthplace, says Walt was homeschooled, which allowed his creativity to bloom.
Walt had the opportunity to be creative, to play, to learn.
He says outside the house, the Disneys were staples in the community, often involved in multiple businesses and the church.
His parents also were provided good guidance for them. I mean, you see in the picture behind me, they're dressed in their Sunday best, going to church.
He says their faith and values kept the home full of laughter.
We actually found this compartment.
And some Disney surprises too.
Where Elias would have kept all the important papers.
And set his family and Walt up for success.
The Disneys were ordinary people who did extraordinary things.
And I am told that the tree was indeed sprinkled by pixie dust. Well, if you'd like to take a tour here at the Walt Disney birthplace, you can do that this weekend through Open House Chicago, hosted by the Chicago Architecture Tour. I'm Jasmine Miner for ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC7 Chicago.
First of all,
Eyewitness
shout out to the
News.
fine sister reporting on that story. Amen. Praise him. Hallelujah. And also shout out to the brother who did that. That's really cool. Is this separate from like D23? Because I know that for D23, the fan club, they also they take trips to Marceline, Missouri to tour his home. So I don't know if they will be doing tours of the Chicago home.
No, I don't think they would. I'm kind of surprised they wouldn't, that they don't. But I kind of found it fascinating that learning a while back that his house was still standing. But when I found out about his home, it was kind of a bit in rough shape. So that video was recorded back in 2024. So it's not too long ago when it's been restored. And being where I'm located, I could try to go over there and go there myself if I want to. So it's going to be interesting if I did. And I'll tell you all about it when I do.
Oh, very good, very good, very good.
But I didn't know if he knew that Walt Disney's home was still in Chicago now.
I didn't know. So I didn't know about this. So yay, new discovery for me.
Yeah.
I knew that the paper route was very important to Walt Disney's story because he was born in Marceline and then they moved the family. His dad, had like a jelly factory.
Hold on. His brothers, are more familiar with Chicago. Like his oldest and his other brother Roy. I think Walt had moved out of Chicago when he was like 2-3 years old, I believe, to move to Marceline. And then from Marceline, they stayed for maybe less than a decade at Marceline before moving to Kansas City from there. So,
right. No, I'm agreeing with you. I was just saying I know that Chicago's been a part of the Disney history for a long time.
We are going to another destination.
Are the cars behind you? Is it passengers or is it employees? Is it?
It's employees, staff. I think they're just all around security, police, or staff. It could be used by anybody. So we got this here. And we're going to talk about briefly of what is the Chicago's World's Fair, the Columbian World Fair of Chicago. Here's a brief intro of Tesla lighting up these skies and World Showcase of Columbian Expedition.
On May 1st, 1893, as a great choir broke into song, President Grover Cleveland flicked a switch and 160,000 light bulbs lit up the evening sky over Chicago, opening the Columbian Exposition. The exposition signaled the coming triumph of alternating current over direct current. Westinghouse had outfoxed Edison, winning the contract to wire the exposition with alternating current. 12 75-ton dynamos generated 3 times more energy than the entire city of Chicago.
Now I can talk about that further on another time, because I had worked on a project that could include Tesla at Disney World.
Was that the World's Fair? That was kind of interesting. That was kind of
those are some photographs from the 1893 Chicago's World's Fair. Yes.
I don't think it's been another World's Fair since 1964, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. You are correct.
I wonder why they haven't done one since then. I mean,
I don't know.
I know the state of the world that we're in right now is not really conducive for an event like that, but with the worlds of technology, media, and culture, I feel like a World's Fair of that scale with the globe and everything, that could be a welcoming event.
Oh yeah.
Since it's a World's Fair, is it kind of like the Olympics where it's a different city or a different part of the world every time? Or
yeah, you could say that maybe.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was in Paris one year, then it goes to St. Louis as well another year, because St. Louis had World's Fair. They had a Chicago World's Fair twice, one in 1893 and another in 1932, and so as well in New York City. But the most famous one that I know of course, is 1964.
No, because when I think about World's Fair, it's like something very ambitious. Because, like, for example, the Eiffel Tower was built for the World's Fair. That was ambitious. Then for Walt Disney, when he went for the World's Fair where he was, that's when they introduced like the Carousel Progress, It's a Small World, all these ambitious, whether it's an attraction or it's a monument or it's something. So if they were ever to do it again, that's how I see World's Fairs. It's like presenting something, uniting the world, but like presenting something extraordinary. Do you guys have a better definition of what a World's Fair pertains?
I would think that would be pretty much it.
To any point in history, one of the places that would easily make my top 10 would be the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. It was filled with invention, innovation, a sense of optimism for the future, and shared the discoveries of some of the greatest minds in the Western world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Historidame, and today we're learning all about the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. The Chicago World's Fair would open to the public on May 5, 1893, and during its 6 months of operation, it would see around 27 million visitors walk through its gates. The fair would cover 2.8 square kilometers of land and feature around 200 buildings, many following neoclassical architecture styles, focusing on elegance and symmetry, each painted bright white. The fair would be known as the Columbian Expedition, to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus and New World. It would also mark a new point in the city of Chicago's history. After being almost entirely burned to the ground in the Great Fire 22 years before, the 1893 Exposition gave Chicago an opportunity to show what the city was capable of and cement its reputation as a world-class destination. The fair's exhibits would be a testament to the world's technological advancements and would feature many everyday items that we still use in our lives today. some for the very first time. Notable historical figures who could be found in attendance included people like Harry Houdini, Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Henry Ford, Helen Keller, and Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of Austria, whose murder would later be the catalyst for World War I. 46 different countries had their own pavilions at the fair, as well as several U.S. states, including California, Colorado, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, and many more. These cultural pavilions contained attractions that would show fairgoers the best that these places had to offer, displaying everything from art to agriculture. There were also 14 industry buildings that showcased the latest inventions across their respective fields. Some highlights include a 3,000-foot aquarium in the Fisheries Building, the first telegraph message ever sent in the Electricity Building, a Japanese garden in the Horticultural Building, and a 22,000-pound piece of cheese, known as the Mammoth Cheese, which was displayed in the Agricultural Building on behalf of Canada. I can only be proud of my country and their giant cheese. There was also the Women's Building, which was the only one of the bunch to be entirely designed, decorated, and run by women. This featured exhibits displaying women's accomplishments from around the world, including things like art, literature, and advancements in science. For those looking for something that skewed towards a younger audience, there was also a children's building, where kids could enjoy murals depicting scenes from popular fairy tales, or see the latest advancements in toy making. Little girls were also encouraged to check out the kitchen garden, where they could learn how to become good housewives, and do fun activities like making beds, sweeping floors. Young boys, on the other hand, were sent to the Swedish workshop, where they could practice using tools and learn wood carving. But among all of these pavilion buildings, I noticed a certain trend that tends to arise numerous times. That being, weird sculptures. Yes, the Victorians loved a good thing made out of another thing. There were sculptures made of chocolate, including a 7.5-foot tall recreation of Christopher Columbus, and replicas of classic statues. The mining building had a mini Statue of Liberty made out of salt. And
hold on. What did you hear? I want chocolate too.
No, I was going to say there's a scene in the Johnny Depp version of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where the Indian prince wanted his temple made entirely out of chocolate. So just to make that connection, you can keep playing. I just thought that was.
Yeah, I could back it up and so can you want me to back that up to that scene?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Whenever food is involved, we have to pause it.
Yes.
Oh, that is made of. Oh, the statue is made of chocolate.
Yes. Now, earlier this year, there was a 5-pound chocolate bunny being sold at Costco. If you want to spend $75 for it, 5 pounds of chocolate, a 5-pound bunny. I like chocolate, but I'm not sure if I eat something. Okay, they probably don't give statues to eat like that.
Foot-tall recreation of Christopher Columbus, and replicas of classic statues. The mining building had a mini Statue of Liberty made out of salt. And on behalf of California, there was a 35-foot-tall tower made of oranges. This tower contained 14,000 of the fruit, and had to be entirely replaced every 3 to 4 weeks to prevent it from spoiling. Even more impressive was the Edison Tower in the Electric Building, a structure that was covered in thousands of twinkling lights, showcasing just one of the electric wonders that the fair would be known for. There was also apparently a map of the United States made out of pickles, but unfortunately I couldn't find a photo. The Midway was a mile-long strip of amusements where the quote-unquote less sophisticated attractions could be found. To the average fairgoer, however, this was the place to be. Many of these attractions would charge an additional fee alongside your entry ticket, and were chosen to appeal to the masses. Here, guests could catch a show by famous escape artist Harry Houdini, or see a menagerie of trained animals performing tricks at Hagenbeck Zoological Arena. Those who were interested in a more thrilling experience might also take a turn on several of the dubiously safe rides, like Thomas Rankin's Snow and Ice Railway, a refrigerated toboggan slide featuring a 25-foot drop, or a hot air balloon, which would take passengers up to 15,000 feet into the air, until one day a strong gust of wind caused it to crash, much to the horror of passengers and onlookers. But by far, the star attraction of the Midway was the Ferris wheel. Built to be a centerpiece of the fairgrounds, and to flex on the Eiffel Tower from the 1889 World's Fair in Paris, this massive 264-foot tall ride was the very first of its kind, and would give guests a stunning view of the surrounding fairgrounds and city of Chicago, or gain a following at the fair. These included favorites like Quaker Oats, Juicy Fruit Gum, Cream of Wheat, Hershey's Chocolate, and the famous breakfast mascot Aunt Jemima. There were also quite a few notable inventions that would make an appearance during the exposition. Josephine Garish Cochran would showcase a new type of machine that she created out of a pure hatred.
What?
Juicy fruit was in the 1800s.
Yeah. You knew that, right?
Yes,
I'm shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of good things came from that fair. Yeah.
For cleaning up after dinner parties. This dishwasher was a hand-powered contraption that was able to clean your tableware for you. A revolutionary idea. Her invention was so popular amongst those at the fair that she was even able to open up her own factory a few years later. Guests could also place their coins inside a mysterious device that would flatten them into the world's very first elongated pennies. This novel idea would grow in popularity until similar machines could be found in tourist attractions all across the country. But arguably the most impressive thing to be showcased to the public was the widespread use of electricity around the fairgrounds. Though it had been used in a small capacity at World's Fairs in the past, the 1893 fair was the very first of its kind to be lit entirely by electric lighting. At this point in history, the idea of electricity for common use was relatively new. In fact, it was rather feared by the public, until people would witness electric lighting for the very first time in those fairgrounds. We actually have the Chicago World's Fair to thank for changing the public's attitude towards this new technology. Now, I don't think any video about the Chicago World's Fair is complete until we talk about some of the wild events that happened during its run. Not too far away from the fairgrounds, one could find the World's Fair Hotel, which was built under the guise of providing lodging for those visiting Chicago for the fair. Though it did provide cheap accommodation, its true purpose was to give a place in which its owner, H.H. Holmes, could trap his murder victims. Later nicknamed the Murder Hotel, this building allegedly contained various secret passageways, trapdoors, and even gadgets.
Yeah, there is a really interesting story to H.H. Holmes in Chicago. They think he's the Jack the Ripper from London. There's weird stories about how they try to connect him to Jack the Ripper of London. It's up for speculation. Ripper and him had similarities, but not guaranteed that they were the same guy.
I mean, hell, if I just wanted a BBW brothel, I would just, buy a property in Vegas, build it on the outskirts, and just have a bar. I don't have to do this to just have. That's out in our hole. Hey.
Yeah, it is not too far from the fair. And here in this article, it's on 63rd Street, and that's where the fairgrounds were. You're going to add anything else to it? Because we could talk about H.H. Holmes. Well,
no, I'm glad that the person who did the video recognized that there were a lot of inventions by Black people, African Americans, that really got noticed. Like, for example, like air conditioning, the traffic light. There's a lot of inventions that.
Mm-hmm.
If you took away those things, we wouldn't have a world today.
Yeah,
like sincerely.
True.
That is true until someone else had made it up. it could be a few years down the line, though. Someone would have at least, maybe, in my opinion, made them.
I mean, have a day where they remove all. Have a day with and they have one day and just don't tell them it's just for one day, but just tell them you're not gonna have your car today.
Yeah.
Is the day going to be chaos? The day is going to be chaos.
Yeah.
Who will walk?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, if it's not that person, maybe, just maybe, down the line, somebody else would have it done, and we might be like years behind of where we are today.
Chambers that allowed Holmes to trap and kill his guests who stayed the night. Though many historians believe that the accounts of the World's Fair Hotel were highly exaggerated by the press, there is evidence that Holmes did kill multiple people, but the total number of his victims is still up for debate. Another notable event is that 2 days before the end of the fair, the mayor of Chicago was assassinated, resulting in the closing ceremonies needing to be cancelled and replaced with a memorial service. There were also 2 fires that broke out on the fairgrounds, the first happening on July 10th, which would end up being the deadliest firefighting incident in Chicago's history at the time. The blaze began in the giant cold storage building, where much of the exposition's food was kept. 15 people would be killed when the building collapsed due to damages from the fire, killing 12 firefighters and 3 civilians who were still inside. The second fire would take place in January after the fair had already closed, destroying most of what was left of the White City, while the people of Chicago could do nothing but watch. Today, only a few of the pavilion halls remain standing, but luckily...
That right there is the Science and Industry Building. And it's you can go inside it today, and it's a great museum.
The 1893 Chicago World's Fair still lives on in the many surviving photographs, newspaper articles, and first-hand accounts about the event. And in combination, we can still get a little glimpse into what it was like to attend the fair that changed America.
Now, if you were kind of curious...
See, that's why we don't have another World's Fair, because we would have to build like a huge architectural area, or event, and that's nothing. The biggest thing is we would have to invent some new things. And what have they invented today, but it's not like an advanced AI or an upgrade.
Yeah, and if you want to know where the World's Fair was located, it was located in Jackson Park here. Okay, in the south end of Chicago. So, say the Japanese garden is right here. This is the Osaka Garden. And here is one of the many bridges that was at the fair. And here's the Science and Industry Building. That was part of the fair that survived. And well, this one over here, Brennan knows what that is. I'm not a fan of the architecture. We can, Thornton and I can harp on the architecture of this, but it should build something better.
Wait, what's going on?
I don't think Brian knows what that is.
The presidential building was kind of an eyesore. Like, couldn't you build it better?
Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, when it comes to this, I think everything's in the eye of the beholder. I think with the world the way it is right now, I'm sure that every floor does have a purpose. And also too, I mean, it's his building. I mean, we all know that the president's gonna have it all in gold, and ain't gonna have nobody that look like me, probably look like y'all in it. So like, it is what it is. It's bringing money, it's bringing jobs, and there could be worse things in the world right now. So just
Wait, I don't know what this is. Is this under construction right now?
It's going to open in mid-June. I just found out yesterday night.
I don't think I know about this. In Chicago? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be open
because he was from Illinois. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It was like a senator from Illinois before. So yeah, the World's Fair was this whole property of Jackson Park. You have a German World War II submarine in here. I'm guessing. And yeah, there was a this over here, which this is something you may see in Blues Brothers, or if it's not that, it's hold on, it's could be this down here. It was Blues Brothers was filmed on this park as well, and the Midway was here also. The World's Fairs too. And here is a replica statue of one of what they had at the fair. This is a replica, guys. At one of the streets of park, World's Fair used to be. A photograph of what the area used to be like. World's Fair. There's no wall shot of what the World's Fair was. Is now. It's just amazing how fast they build.
Yes.
It's interesting when you said the final World's Fair was in the 1960s, but it's interesting when they describe Epcot. When they say Epcot is like the permanent World's Fair.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what I'm looking at right now. There might be something left from the World's Fair. Here is a plaque dedicated to the 100th anniversary of the Chicago World's Fair. Anyway. If you're kind of interested how maybe in bigger scale maybe World's Fair was, here is what maybe the AI may think of what the World's Fair actually looked like in scale. Okay.
White buildings rising out of what used to be a swamp. This city doesn't exist anymore. 600 acres of white buildings rising out of what used to be a swamp. They built the whole thing in 2 years. In 6 months, they'll tear it all down. But right now, in the summer of 1893, this is the most spectacular place on Earth. The gates open at 8. Farmers from Kansas, factory workers from Ohio, families who saved for a year just to be here. They've read about this place in newspapers. Now they get to see it. Admission is 50 cents. That's half a day's wage for most people. Nobody complains. The Court of Honor stops people in their tracks. A giant lagoon surrounded by white palaces, fountains everywhere. A golden statue of a woman 65 feet tall staring out at the water. Some visitors just stand there. Some cry. Most of them have never seen anything this big that wasn't a mountain. Inside the electricity building, the future has arrived early. Most Americans have never seen an electric light. Here, there are thousands of them. Edison has a booth, so does Westinghouse. They're in a war over whose electricity is better. There's a machine that records your voice and plays it back. People think it's witchcraft. It's called a phonograph. And then there's the wheel, 264 feet tall, 36 cars, each one the size of a bus. It holds over 2,000 people at once. They built it to outdo the Eiffel Tower. Some engineers said it would collapse. It didn't. The line takes 3 hours. Nobody leaves. From the top, you can see everything. The white city spreading out below, Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon, and beyond that, the gray sprawl of actual Chicago, the stockyards, the smokestacks, the real city that will still be here next year. The food is strange. There's a new snack called Cracker Jack, caramel popcorn with peanuts, juicy fruit gum, sold for the first time, hamburgers, which most people have never eaten, also something called carbonated soda. It tickles your nose. Children love it.
Oh, yeah.
They're dressed all fancy, but eating crap. Just kidding.
The Midway
Not crap,
is where
but I
things
mean,
get weird.
not
A
fancy.
mile of attractions and sideshows. Villages imported from Egypt, Algeria, Java, complete with actual people who were paid to live there for 6 months. There are belly dancers, camel rides, a guy who claims to have the world's largest cheese. It's part carnival, part human zoo. Nobody knows quite what to think. The women's building is different, designed by a woman, filled with inventions, art, and writing by women. It's the first time most visitors have seen anything like this. Suffragists hand out pamphlets. The vote is still 30 years away, but something is shifting. By afternoon, people are exhausted. There's too much to see, too much to understand. Families sit on benches, feet aching, trying to figure out what to do next. Some have been walking for 6 hours straight. Then the sun goes down, and the real show begins. 100,000 electric lights flicker on at once. The white city turns into a city of light. Buildings glow. The water reflects everything. Most of these people have never seen electric light before. Now they're swimming in it. The fair stays open until midnight. Couples stroll along the lagoon. Children fall asleep in their parents' arms. Somewhere, an orchestra is playing. The Ferris wheel keeps turning, lit up against the black sky. 27 million people will visit before it's over. 1 in 4 Americans. And then it's gone. Fire takes most of it. The rest gets torn down. Within a year, you won't be able to tell any of this was here. No videos survive, just photographs, drawings, and the memories of people who are all dead now. But for one summer in 1893, this impossible city was real, and everyone who saw it never forgot it.
Now, you're kind of curious what survived and what is still around, aren't you?
Say that again, Phil.
So you're kind of curious of what survived and survived now, what's available now?
Oh yeah, I would be curious to know what survived. I know it's fascinating because the Eiffel Tower, the Eiffel Tower was like a thing, one of those
I
things
know
too
Eiffel
that was
Tower
supposed to be.
was to be knocked down and they kept it.
Yeah,
we wanted to outdo the Eiffel Tower, so we built the Ferris wheel. So, and
Do we know the reason why they kept the Eiffel Tower? I should know this, but
I believe it was more or less like people wanted it there because it's just like so amazing.
But it's crazy. It's kind of crazy because like the Eiffel Tower at the time was a giant steel thing, and people thought it was hideous at the time. This was like these in Chicago here. There's like such beautiful palaces or that, and the fact that they didn't say, "Oh, let's keep it. It's so beautiful."
They
No, tear
tried
it
to
down.
keep it, but during the time, there was some groups running around through Chicago trying to cause some problems. Some anarchists running around through Chicago during the 1890s. Yet you heard about like the Haymarket riots. Those people are probably more or less the ones that had burned down. Uh, and one of those people did admit that they did burn down World's Fair. They found something, and they were part of that organization, the Hayes Market. There's an arsonist that burned down the rest of the World's Fair showcase. So the story has sadly.
Can we pause this? I have a brief announcement to make. It's on live.
Beyond this gate, find gardens green and epic worlds to fill your dreams.
that doesn't make you upset, there's nothing more. Okay, I guess nothing will wake you up. We tried. Well, if you've seen the rock and roller coaster Story Muppets, just one more try, and I'm gonna just keep on moving on.
Oh, you mean the POV of the new attraction?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I have not.
Yes. I see this very often.
Get tenders, wedges, and a Dr. Pepper for $8, only at Pilot and Flying J.
Did you hear that in the Q line music? They have music from various bands playing. So you just had heard for 10 seconds. Did you hear? Like had 10-second blip of Death Leopard, and then somebody else in the Q line playing. I just heard it. Yeah. Interesting.
Electric Mayhem, we should really be heading to your concert. We're already very late. Whoa, look at all the looky-loos. Oh, hey, the VIP tour. Welcome, everyone. What's happening, Dave?
Wait, you have been at the studio this whole time?
Indeed. We've been rehearsing for the big show.
We're at the big show, and you were due on stage hours ago.
Hey, Suda, why didn't you tell us we were late? But Bozzy.
Whew. I tried to stall, but tough crowd. Hey, you guys better get moving. Traffic is so bad it'd be faster to waka waka. I don't know how much longer this crowd's gonna wait.
Don't worry, Kermit. The Mayhem will be there.
Good.
I have no idea. Dr. Honeydew?
Oh, excuse us. Peter and I were just testing the latest innovation from Muppet Labs, the lengthy immediate motion object.
A limo.
It's pronounced limo, actually.
How fast can it go in here?
Factoring in the current traffic conditions.
You got a minute and a half. Okay, we should get going.
What about all of them?
You know how we feel about that. All right, how about backstage passes for everyone?
I love that idea.
Okay, we got places to be and people to rock.
Load up. Enjoy the show. See you later. Have fun. Rock on.
And they got the pizza there.
Oh wait, there's
Oh, looks like bean, but it's not bean right now.
All right, VIPs, we'll have you at that concert in no time. Well, time is relative. Anyway, let's do the concert.
It's just getting started. That's time to simplify your mind. Hang on, because we're about to get wild.
Wait, I still got that. What else?
You missed the sound check. It was terrible. Really? What happened? It worked. These seats are terrible. Too far away. Not far enough.
Okay, so maybe they have a soft serve float. They have churros.
Okay, so that was cool. That was my first time, very first time
What did you think of
experiencing. It's very wow. It's very that was a great pre-show. So much more than I expected.
Yeah. Now, did you also see that the Muppets did a little show just on the day of its opening on
they did.
yeah, they did a little show in front of the attraction on Code talked about it, I think.
Okay,
And
I'm not aware of that. So.
it could be just if there was enough fan demand, it could go to replace the villains
Yeah.
after. But,
Do you have? Yeah. Yes. But speaking about that, the thing is, crazy to me that they took something. Muppets is multi-generational, so from multi-generational, no matter what age, and the fact that they removed the Muppets courtyard, and now so far, because don't know what else though. What will be the future? If there'll be another experience, another show for people who don't ride coasters, like young ones and seniors. But to take something that was multi-generational, I mean, if this opened at the same time that they had like Muppets 3D moved or another show, then it would be great because you got two things. But I don't know. It's crazy Whereas you could have took like an IP or something that was more like adult or teen driven, and then use that to put it on Rock and Roll Coaster. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
But at least they keep the Muppets alive, so that's good for that.
Yeah, good for them. But I mean, the way they had to just the excuse of moving the Muppets and everything, I'm not a fan of. If you wanted to do this, you could have done this over and you could have built a freaking roller coaster for the Muppets, but whatever.
Oh, you mean where the door coaster is? They build a. Are you saying have both and build a Muppets coaster next to the door coaster, or are you saying keep Muppet Vision and build a Muppet coaster where door coaster is?
They could have had.
I don't see the problem of having Muppets with monsters coexist.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. You could build a Muppets coaster in place of monsters, or we could have, two the same thing in the same area.
Now the real big test of time will be what they replace in the Muppets Vision Theater. That is going to be a huge call out. Yeah. If it's a compete win, like I don't know if it will be a win or if it's completely. But I don't know. I think that's going to be the biggest factor as to whether it was worth it or not.
Well, as you can see here,
after 10 years,
this is
I finally got my chance.
At night, opening night.
Hey, shoot! You can't be up here right now. The show's starting. Oh.
This is some kind of fancy pants private event because the Muppets are now starring in that new rock and roller coaster ride.
Oh, that's just great news.
Yeah.
Look, maybe we can get the animatronic versions of us to take our place here.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, let's get out of here before we get stuck watching this thing.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no.
What's the matter?
Well, they've bolted us to these seats, too.
What?
Oh,
no.
No.
Help!
Help! Get us out of here!
Bring a machete!
Bring a toolbox!
Anything!
Not again.
Hey, you chickens! Hey, shoot! You can't be up here right now. The show's starting. Okay, folks, the time has come. It's the moment, yes, you've all been waiting for. We hope. Here they are. They're legendary. They're wild as it gets, and they're almost never this punctual. So put your hands together for the Electric Mayhem.
Get out on the highway for redemption, and whatever comes our way. Yeah, now we gonna make it happen. Take the world in loving grace. Fly up to the top, fly up to the stage. Like a coaching light, heavy metal thunder. With the wind, and I'm feeling that I'm under. Yeah, now we're gonna make it happen. Take the world in loving grace. Fly up to the top, fly up to the stage. It's a time, we were born to be wild. We can climb so high, and never wanna die. To be wild. Born to be wild. Yeah, on the highway, looking for redemption. Get whatever comes our way. And now we're gonna make it happen. Take the world in loving grace. Fire up in the dark with one sound. Fire up in the space. Like a truth, it's a child. We were born to be wild. We can climb so high. I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild. Born to be wild. Fire. 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 Born to be wild.
Everyone! Hola, hola! Hola, Mr. DJ persons. Do you take requests?
No, not really.
What? Oh, come on. I need to dance, okay? You're a DJ. This stands for the dancing job, see?
Well, I mean, kind of.
Now, come on. I need to move my hips, okay? You know, how about some hip-hop?
Did you say hip hop?
No.
You say hop? You say hop? I hop. Look.
No, not like the Bonnie's hop. The hip hop, okay?
Oh, hip hop. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we do it with our hips. Yeah, with our hip, we hip hop with our hips.
No. Come on. I'm talking about the music style, okay? Hip hop.
Hip hop. Oh, well, that's different.
No. Hip hop. Hip hop.
No, I don't know what that means. Excuse me, Mr. DJ. Do you happen to take requests by any chance?
Sorry, not really.
Oh, that's a shame. I was hoping to dedicate a song to my Uncle Peter.
Your Uncle Peter?
Yeah.
As in Cottontail?
You know him?
Are you kidding? Who doesn't? All right, what can I play for you?
Oh, well, he really loves...
There's got to be another DJ bus around here somewhere.
And any late 70s rap. He loves late 70s rap.
All right, this next one's going out to my main man, PC Tail.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is
I take it back. Wait, I take something back that it fits. It fits with the music and the Electric Mayhem. It fits for this. So my remark was only on the Muppets franchise as a whole, and so we'll see.
Yeah.
This is better than if they had like if they did a Taylor Swift if they did a Taylor Swift rock and roll coaster. Like, come on.
Nobody's writing that.
Unless you're a Swiftie fan, sorry, no offense.
Writing that, guys. Nobody's writing Taylor Swift. Right? Nobody is. Just
by the way, they were saying they were gonna say too that there's like celebrity appearances in this attraction.
Yes.
So
Yes. We're getting to that point right about now.
It's out there in the audience.
Oh, wow. Like there's so many of our friends from the roller coaster here tonight. Oh, look. There's Darren Prince. Oh, there's Yvette.
Stamos! Whoa, no, animal. That's definitely Yvette.
No. I think he means me. I'm right here.
What?
Yeah. Stamos, strong.
Well, now, I think maybe that animal wants you to drum with us, man.
Oh, I'm flattered. I do play drums, but you know what? You got this handled. You got it covered, Animal. You're the best. Go ahead.
Oh, well, then, what are we going to do with these bongos we just found backstage?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where my bongos went. Well, you know what? As long as my bongos are here, I might as well play a song with you guys, right?
Hey, y'all want to lay witness to the Stamos man laying down some bongos with a mayhem? Stamos, welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with one of the greatest rock and roll bands in history. What song are we going to play?
Well, your melodious inclusivity evokes much to ponder.
No, for sure. Like, what are your inner good vibrations telling you?
Yeah.
Can you hear them?
I'm here in the subway. Please stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Oh, wow, that's it, Zoot. Okay, how about this?
No, we cannot play this one. Remember, my mom hates this song.
We can't play the song because Mom hates the song.
That's right, sorry.
Okay, well, how about something totally sweeter like this?
You got me there. You better remember that one CBGB where and everybody died.
Everybody died?
Yeah, that's right.
We can't play a song that everybody died. What else? Hey, I got an idea. Puppet, Animal, why don't you lay down a groove? I'll play some songs and you guys will clap and sing along and participate. How about that?
I got one.
All right, do it then. You do it. Go on, John.
Stop that. Cease and desist. Mr. Stamos, kindly refrain from further bongoing at this time.
Oh man, not Joe from Legal.
Unfortunately, any and all encouragement of rhythmic audience participation en masse without proper PPE for all parties is in direct violation of our current safety agreement. Participants must refrain from stomping, clapping, or any other synchronized noise making at this junction.
What if we shake?
Negative.
Rattle?
Nope. Not a chance. In fact, all motions will be denied.
Let's look like we're not going to play a song, so I'm getting a little hungry. I'm going to go get some snacks.
Oh, we thought you'd never ask. Turkey legs and corn dogs on John.
Turkey legs.
Churros too. Let's do it.
How many churros? How many churros?
That sounds nice.
Churro. Here we go again.
Come on, John.
Look, I just wanted to take a moment to say that it is such a pleasure to be here tonight, celebrating with you.
3 years. I spent days keyframing it.
Overtly connected in almost every facet, whether it's through culture, media, technology, or art. Though throughout the majority of human history, this was not the case. Global interconnectivity was only made possible through advanced forms of travel and communication. One cultural marker that points to the transition from global isolation to inclusion is the World's Fair, which were also called World Expositions, where people from all around the globe came to both present and admire scientific, cultural, or artistic creation from their peers. There have been several impactful iterations of the World Fair throughout history, but one edition in particular was the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, held in Chicago. For both the city of Chicago and the entire world, this event left a lasting impact. What's more, for a city that was rebuilding itself after a devastating fire, the exposition proved as a shining example of Chicago's resilience. From the Ferris wheel to Chicago-style hot dogs, or Woodrow Wilson to electricity, this edition of the World Fair often served as a first exposure to things that would become household names for many. Originally held to commemorate the 400-year anniversary of Christopher Columbus's discovery of America, the World's Columbian Exhibition in Chicago now serves as a marker within American history itself, signaling the height of the Industrial Revolution and, more explicitly, a foreshadowing for passing the torch from Europe to America in terms of geopolitical and cultural power. Today, we discover the World's Columbian Exposition. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. Since the mid-1700s, the World Fair has been a momentous global event held every few years, and many feel that the popularity was a direct result of the Industrial Revolution, rapidly advancing technology in terms of communication and travel, as well as exponential hyper-globalization of the world. These expositions would not be possible without the global trends of the time. And as these developments became more prevalent in society, the World's Fair served as an international celebration of technology, scientific, artistic, and cultural advancements. As U.S. President William McKinley said in 1901, quote, "Expositions are the timekeepers of progress. They record the world's advancement. And while the focus is usually on the technology or science, a large part of each event was also about the entertainment section, which existed as an exhibition of music, food, performances, shows, rides, and many more. In the United States, this gathering was referred to as World's Fair, whereas in Europe or Asia, they were often referred to as World Expositions or Expos. And in the UK, the event was called the World Exposition, showing how global of an affair this really all became. Each edition usually lasts for several months and was hosted in a single country, making it a window for many to experience the culture and the people of a particular nation or singular city. Since the mid-1700s, there have been over 100 iterations of the World Fair, hosted in more than 20 countries. Since 1928, the governing body which had scheduled and organized the World Fair has been the Bureau International des Expositions, or BIE, which runs out of Paris, France. And surprisingly, the World's Fair is ongoing, with the most recent edition being Expo 2020, which was rescheduled due to the pandemic and was ultimately held from October the 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022.
Wait a minute, hold on. Are you guys still awake?
Yeah, I am. No worries.
Okay, all right. So, wait a minute. Am I hearing this right? There's expeditions still going on, but how come I don't hear about them?
Argentina. Oh, wait, 2023.
Yeah. There was
Oh,
one in Dubai, but it didn't happen because of the lockdowns, diseases, and stuff.
but they call it Expo now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like the expedition, like we called it in Chicago, just Expo for short. Because it's all nations, come together. They just show off their latest feats and technologies.
In Dubai. The next edition is Expo 2023 and will be held in Argentina. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. The origin of the World Fair dates back to the later half of the 18th century in England, where fairs and carnivals were.
I'm going to look up what is the expo for this year. That's the rest of the year.
Becoming very popular among the population. In a time which saw the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, a lot of change was brought to Europe, specifically England, and suddenly, common people were faced with new technology that was advancing faster than they could keep up with. So in an effort to spread both the understanding and the innovations themselves, organizations like the Society of Arts held their own events to display all of their inventions. Now, across the English Channel in France, the French government saw what England was doing and felt both impressed but also intimidated. So they sponsored several similar events to demonstrate French technological superiority, and with these two competing countries holding events throughout the rest of the century, the World's Fair was imminent. The World Fair as we know it today, with the same amount of organization and formalization, was hosted in 1851 with Britain's Great Exposition at the famous Crystal Palace Hall, with the underlying goal being a desire to spread British commerce throughout the world. From that point until the First World War, World Fairs were extremely popular events, drawing millions of visitors to each venue, which were held in countries like Australia, Guatemala, Vietnam, Belgium, and so on. The expositions held in the US would be particularly impactful as they signaled the growing power of the United States on the international stage, with the 1893 fair in Chicago being a good example of that. Unfortunately, though, after both world wars, the Cold War, and various other global conflicts, it became an impossible event to host across the world like they normally would. And sadly, the World Fair fell into obscurity, but the legacy it left behind will probably never die. So now that we have the context, let's discuss what happened in Chicago.
I could not find anything as great.
I found
I could not find it.
I found 2025 was Osaka, Japan. So my guess is they did it in 2025, but not 2026.
Well, we haven't had it yet.
So far.
Well, Osaka, Japan. Was the theme of designing future society for our lives that showcases breakthrough through technologies, fresh ideas, sustainable solutions from 150 countries and organizations, focusing on sub-themes like saving lives, empowering, connecting lives to achieve the yada yada goals. The event features national pavilions, cultural performances, futuristic technology displays, attracting visitors. Kind of like how it actually. It was running from April 13th to October 13th last year. So half a year, just like this Chicago World's Fair was for 6 months. What you would have had expected at the fair was showcases of beyond 5G, wireless technology, AI integration, real-time robotics, national pavilions of unique structures and exhibits from participating countries like the Swiss Pavilions Cafe and the Philippine Woven Pavilion. Cultural experiences, national days with traditional music, dance, and ceremonies such as Poland's Cultural Week and Ethiopia's Folk Music Concert. Thematic projects, there are 8 signature pavilions with themes like Future of Life and Earth Mart. Spectacular shows are a water plaza with massive water cascade, lighting and laser shows. The ticket sales ended on September 30th, 2025. Will there be a World Expo in 2026? And it says yes, it's in Boston, but when I click on Boston, it doesn't really give me a really great, exciting details about Boston, because when I clicked into the World Expo being located in Boston, it gave me nothing but a stamp collection. There got to be something more I'm going to find out later about that, but we are going to probably have to revisit this show in particular to add to it, to see what the Osaka 2025 Expo is, because what I can read in the Osaka World Expo kind of sounds kind of like how the expos of then were kind of been was like, if you know what I mean. You read the what Osaka's World's Fair was.
No, I didn't. I did not read about it. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I did not hear about. I did not read about it. I don't know how they're doing it now. Versus, it might be. It has to be a bit more drastically different than. Of course, it's called World Expo. It's not called World's Fair.
Yeah.
Curious to see how like, for example, how the Osaka Japan one, like what did they showcase? How was it?
We're gonna have to do this sometime then and see if it's worthy. I'm sending to you of the Osaka Expo and see if we can have part 2 of this. Okay?
Yeah.
I just
this one can be. We just keep this one about the Chicago World Fair.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Anyway, so we will continue the rest of this Expo Chicago.
90s approached, many Americans wanted to host the next World Fair, especially in light of all the excitement surrounding the groundbreaking 1889 World Fair in Paris. They certainly wanted to host the event around the year 1892 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's discovery of America. Already at that time, both Americans and Europeans were aware of the possible future in which the U.S. became a world superpower. Books at the time even described Columbus's voyage as the most important event in human history, aside from religious events such as the coming of messiahs or prophets. With the immense amount of potential power the U.S. had, those same books went as far as comparing the U.S. to the Roman Empire. This was the mindset that the committee organizers of the event had when building this iteration. All they needed to do was choose an American city to host. And many cities came forward, such as New York, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., but ultimately, Chicago won out. The Midwestern city was chosen partly because of its central location, but mainly because of its advanced railway system, which could easily transport visitors into and around the city. But what eventually became the deciding factor as to why Chicago was selected was actually the large public desire among citizens. Only a few years earlier, the whole city was rocked by the Great Chicago Fire, and in the midst of a massive rebuilding process, the population was unified and wanted to express their resilience and ability to prosper to the entire world. So after Chicago's citizens raised $5 million in funds, Chicago's World Fair was greenlit and construction began. Parts of the city were redesignated or newly built for the World Fair. Chicago's own Daniel H. Burnham was made the chief architect, and with Charles B. Atwood as his designer-in-chief and Frederick Law Olmsted as the head of landscaping, Burnham had gathered the greatest architects in America at the time to design and build the facilities to host this great World Fair. Some of these architects included Richard Morris.
Burnham practically rebuilt Chicago.
Hunt, Charles McKinn, Robert Peabody, George B. Post, Henry Van Brunt, Louis Sullivan, and so on. All of these masters had worked on some of the biggest and most important architectural projects of the time. Inspired by the Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition of 1876, which celebrated the 100th anniversary of the United States as a country, the designers decided that the Chicago Exposition would be held in a collection of buildings across a portion of the city, rather than just one hall. The exposition was planned to cover 686 acres in Chicago's South Side lakefront area, currently known as Jackson Park. All the designers also had a particular interest in neoclassical architecture, a style harkening back to ancient Rome or ancient Greece, involving an emphasis on marble structures such as columns, arches, domes, and large, extravagant buildings. This type of architecture was the prevailing style of all structures built, and overall, the complex made to hold this exposition was 4 times larger than the previous fair in Paris in 1889. On October the 1st, President Cleveland stood outside the administration building and turned on the Alice engine with the push of a button, starting the power for the entire exhibition. The 1893 World's Columbian Exhibition finally officially kicked off in Chicago, and people from all across the world immediately traveled to the city's south side to experience the new innovations. Out on the lake, many different ships were presented, such as replicas of Columbus's ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. There was also a Japanese dragon boat, a Viking ship from Norway, and Centennial gondolas. In the neoclassical Court of Honor buildings, massive exhibition halls presented the most cutting-edge technology, and electricity quickly became the most talked about topic. As electricity was just about to become the common commodity that it is today, visitors were enamored with the new electric innovations, such as incubators for chicken eggs, electric execution chairs, the fax machine, sewing machines, electric irons, laundry washing machines, the light bulb, and various other engines. This area of the expo was eventually labeled the White City due to all the marble neoclassical aesthetics, as well as the fact that the buildings would be lit up at night with electrical lights. Other than the White City, the most illustrious portion of the expo was the Midway section. Generally, the Midway section was focused more on pure entertainment and audience enjoyment. Over time, the Midway got so popular that it actually lured customers away from White City, to which they responded by altering their exhibits to accommodate for more crowd engagement. Soon, the White City now offered contests like tug-of-war, tightrope walking, parachute jumping, as well as boat and swimming races. However, the Midway was most known for introducing the world to the Ferris wheel. If the lasting image of the 1889 World Fair in Paris was the Eiffel Tower, designed by French architect Gustave Eiffel, well then the Chicago World's Fair Committee wanted to design a revolutionary structure of its own for this edition. Surprisingly, Gustav Eiffel even offered to build another tower. Initially, the plan was to build a massive 1,500-foot tower made of wooden logs. But in the end, the committee wanted the landmark structure of Chicago's World Fair to be designed by an American. So they went with George Washington Ferris, who built the Ferris wheel. The final structure was a 250-foot diameter wheel with seats on the perimeter, revolving in between two 140-foot high towers. The Ferris wheel was extremely popular, attracting 1.4 million rides and selling for 50 cents per 2 rides, which was a lot back then. The Midway also had many circus acts, including dwarf elephants, two-headed pigs, and jugglers, alongside other acts like Harry Houdini, the ragtime piano player Scott Joplin, Buffalo Bill Cody and the Wild West Show, as well as beauty pageants. Music and food were also large attractions for the fair, including local cuisine, but also culture found beyond. Musicians, bands, choirs, ensembles, orchestras from states throughout the US, as well as Turkey, Egypt, Algeria, China, Indonesia, Scotland, and many more appeared on stages in Chicago. Displaying different cultures was also a center part of the World Fair, and there were whole exhibitions dedicated to this. Alongside German and Irish villages, there were also Algerian belly dancers, an Indian reservation, several mosques, and a Cairo street. Many political speakers from all corners of the political spectrum came to give speeches, such as Woodrow Wilson, Susan B. Anthony, Jane Addams, Frederick Douglass, Elizabeth Stanton, and others. The legacy of the 1893 World Columbian Exhibition in Chicago still stands today, as it has affected the world in many ways. Overall, it cost a total of $28,340,700 to hold the exhibition, with $18,678,000 spent just on construction and landscaping alone. However, including both paid and free attendance, somewhere between 25 and 28 million attended this event. And after subtracting the cost from the ticket sales, $446,832 were made in profit, proving that a large event like this, celebrating cultures from across the globe, could generate positive income. It should also be stated that the US population at the time was only 63 million, and the country was in the midst of an economic depression, making this turnout number even more impressive. Dubbed the fair that changed Chicago, the citizens of this city were able to show their strength to the world, ultimately proving to be great hosts for an overall great exhibition. But Chicago was not alone amongst those who were impacted by the 1893 World Fair. Food was one area in particular that this expo drastically changed, without most people even being aware of it. For example, most today would consider hamburgers and soda as a stereotypical American cuisine, but the 1893 World Fair was the first time that many Americans ever tried this food in their entire lives. Even the famous Chicago-style hot dog, which many would say is Chicago's signature dish, is claimed to have been created at this World Fair. In fact, many food items which are commonplace today can draw their roots back to this event, such as brownies, juicy fruit gum, Cracker Jacks, and Pabst beer. As we said before, the centerpiece for all the technological exhibits was electricity. And while electricity had already been harnessed as a source of power by European inventors for several years prior, things like electrical light, electrical appliances, or engines were not common household items just yet, meaning this was the first time many Americans had even laid eyes on them. The 1893 World Fair also had a lingering influence on architecture, with the cultural significance of this demonstration leading to a revival of classical architecture at the turn of the century. As a result, in the next few years, many government and state buildings across the country were inspired by the White City, incorporating classical stylistic icons like columns, pediments, statues, and heavy use of marble or stone. One of the most critical but also intangible effects of the 1893 World Fair in Chicago was the new role the U.S. was assuming on the world stage. From the era of European colonization in the 1500s to this point in the 1890s, the European powers like Britain, France, and the Netherlands, Spain or Portugal were the undisputed global superpowers, as kingdoms or empires outside of the European continent simply could not compete economically or were defeated militarily so slowly that they faded away. But now, in 1893, the United States of America emerged as a rising power with the potential to topple the European giants, especially since the U.S. had long since overcome internal issues in the Civil War and the Mexican-American War. With a huge growing population and a vast territory containing seamlessly endless resource, the sleeping giant was awakened during the Industrial Revolution. The early years of this time frame saw Great Britain tighten its grip on free trade and the world economy. But now, the greatest innovations appeared in America, with this World Fair in Chicago serving as proof. In hindsight, the US did not truly become a global superpower until it emerged as the strongest one standing in the ashes of the Second World War. But the 1890s was certainly a preview of things to come. And with that, once you get done hitting that subscribe button anyways, this is Ryan Socash signing off.
Flaunton, did you see that big huge map if you removed all the videos off to the side there? And that,
The map?
you saw the map?
I
It was
don't
in a video.
Oh, it was on the video? Sorry.
It was a really big map. Anyhow, it kind of was a redundant repeat that I was showing you guys earlier. Just had more photographs and anyways, if you want to know, there is also a 2-hour narration by Gene Wilder. If anybody wants to watch it, I guess. Right. Yeah. Expo, Magic of White City, narrated by Gene Wilder himself. Talking about the many greatest achievements in art, architecture, science, and technology and culture that was unveiled here. The 1893 World's Fair was an engineering marvel. This was a narration by Gene Wilder here. I'm not going to tell you all of it.
On the morning of May 1st, 1893, a crowd of over 300,000 people began gathering at a new city, built on the shore of Lake Michigan, 7 miles from downtown Chicago. The morning began gray and overcast, but around 10:30, the sky cleared. The sun shone down on a gleaming city, filled with structures of almost impossible size and grandeur, a new Rome or Venice, an elegant city of canals and classical columns. But unlike Rome or Venice, this was a temporary city, built in just 2 years on a reclaimed swamp in Chicago. The press
is it might be worth your while if you're interested in learning about the Columbian Expedition Worlds Fair in the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. Now, the real exciting part of the show is did you know that they raised buildings in Chicago? They raised the city.
No, I did not.
Well, you kind of had watched a short video yesterday about it.
I found it. Yeah, I found it, but I didn't have a chance to watch it.
Yeah. Well, here's a longer video of that short here, which is rather interesting because, like Gene Wilder just said, it was built on a swamp. That was the World's Fair, and most of the shoreline of Lake Michigan was quite marshy, and Chicago is derived from the Indian word onions or garlic. It had a foul smell, and it was kind of a low-lying area along Lake Michigan, and it would it was a marsh. It would get muddy, and if you step out of the city, or sometimes the city, you get diseases for at the time because swamps and marshes breed mosquitoes. There was just I used to.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another side projects video. This one almost could have made it to the Mega Projects channel. Maybe people in the comments will be like, Simon, this belongs on the Mega Projects channel. What is it doing here? I am outraged. This is all about the raising of Chicago. This is side projects. Let's get into it. Walking along the splendid streets of downtown Chicago, surrounded by towering skyscrapers on all sides, you probably wouldn't guess that about 165 years ago, the city was almost engulfed by a muddy swamp due to the lack of natural drainage. But perhaps more unbelievably than that would be the daring and innovative scheme that the builders of Chicago undertook to solve the drainage problem by raising the whole city on thousands of jackstones over a period of 2 decades. During the 1850s and 60s, the entire city of Chicago, buildings, streets, sidewalks, and all, was manually raised to allow for better drainage. The only pieces of machinery used for the project were hydraulic jacks and jack screws. The extent of elevation varied between 4 and 14 feet in different parts of the city. All the areas close to the river, however, were lifted by a maximum of 10 feet. Private property owners funded most of the work, with public funds being used to cover the remaining costs. In the middle of the 19th century, the elevation of the Chicago area was almost the same as the shoreline of Lake Michigan, the nearest body of water. As water flows downwards, not a revelation, this limited the scope for natural drainage. Moreover, the city had been built on what was essentially a swamp. The original builders of the city hadn't really considered how to ensure that sewage and water drained properly, and, well, as a result, it didn't. Surprise! This came to be a huge problem when, in the 1850s, Chicago grew into an industrial center and a major lake port. Every time it rained heavily, the streets turned to mud and became nearly impassable, stranding carriages, horses, and humans alike. The lakeshore marsh on which the city had been built seemed absolutely bottomless. The basements of homes and commercial establishments were flooded with rain every time. Water stood in stagnant pools all across the city, providing an excellent breeding ground for germs and pathogens. As the population of Chicago increased, these problems were only further exacerbated. Muddy streets and unpleasant living conditions were the least of the problems caused by the lack of proper drainage. The major issue was that the pools of standing water harbored pathogens which posed a serious health menace for the residents. Outbreaks of dysentery and typhoid fever blighted Chicago for over half a decade before culminating in the 1845 cholera epidemic that killed more than 6% of the city's population. Many jokes about the muddy situation made the rounds, with one popular story proclaiming that a passerby came upon a man buried up to his shoulders in the muck and asked if he could help him out. "No, thank you," the man replied. "I have a fine horse under me." It's actually pretty good. According to another one of these jokes, a wagon abandoned in one of Chicago's muddy streets bore the pithy sign, "No bottom here." However, the humor belied the serious nature of the drainage problem and the very real health hazards that it caused. Over the years, the leaders of Chicago tried many different tactics to deal with the problem. Initially, they tried grading the streets to ensure that the water would run into the Chicago River. In civil engineering, grading is the process of ensuring a specified slope for the base of a given construction project, such as a road, railway, or garden. When grading failed to solve the drainage issue, the Chicago administration tried instead to plank the streets over. However, the wooden planks meant to prevent the formation of mud rotted and warped from all of the moisture accumulating underneath them. Finally, the Chicago Sewerage Commissioners was created in order to finally, and hopefully forever, deal with the problem. In 1855, the board decided that the only viable and long-term solution was to install a comprehensive sewer and stormwater system underground. The problem was that underground sewers were built to drain the water downwards, but since Chicago was barely above the water table, the storm sewer system wouldn't work the way that it was supposed to. To make room for this new sewer system and to ensure its efficacy, the city would have to be physically lifted out of the swamp into which it was gradually sinking. A Boston engineer by the name of Ellis S. Chesbrough was hired by the Chicago Board of Sewerage Commissioners to study the problem and recommend a solution. Chesbrough designed what would soon become the first comprehensive sewer system in the United States. He drafted the plans for the system and submitted them to the City Council, which was then known as the Common Council. His plan was accepted, and workers were soon being hired to install sewers under the streets of Chicago. To make enough room for the underground sewage system above the water table, the city streets had to be raised by a few feet, although the ideal level of elevation varied from place to place. However, once the streets were higher, the surrounding buildings would look as though they were half buried, with pedestrians needing to step down from the street in order to reach their front door. Moreover, while the streets would no longer be muddy and impassable, the basements of the houses and shops around them would continue to get flooded with every single downpour. The subpar, unhygienic living conditions and frequent epidemics that they caused would just continue to persist if nothing was done. This was simply unacceptable, so the Common Council decided that all buildings they had to be lifted as well. Over the next 20 years, hydraulic lifts and jack screws were used to lift various buildings into the air so that new foundation walls could be built underneath them. Houses, shops, hotels, and even entire masonry buildings were lifted in this manner. The first masonry building in Chicago was lifted in January 1858. This was a 70-foot-long, 750-ton brick structure located in the northeastern corner of Dearborn and Randolph Streets. Over 200 jack screws were used to lift it up to its new grade, which was 6 feet and 2 inches higher than the original. The entire process was completed without any damage to the building. It was the first of more than 50 similar masonry buildings to be lifted that very year. The contract for this was given to an engineer from Boston named James Brown, who entered into a partnership with the well-known Chicago-based engineer James Hollingsworth. They soon became the most well-known building-raising partnership in town. After a few years, the engineers undertaking this mammoth project figured out how to raise an entire block's worth of infrastructure at once. A city block between LaSalle, Lake, and Clark Streets, estimated to be 320 feet long and weighing 35,000 tons, was raised in its entirety over a period of just 4 days. This was a solid masonry row of offices, shops, and printeries. The buildings in this block, made from stone, brick, and wood, were mostly 4 or 5 stories high. The entire assembly was raised 4 feet 8 inches to make room for the sewers below. No less than 6,000 jack screws operated by 600 men were placed under the block and were used to lift the buildings, street, and sidewalks all at the same time. The process was so gradual that businesses continued as usual throughout the 4 days when the block was being lifted. A consortium of 6 engineers, including George Pullman, James Brown, and James Hollingsworth, came together and pooled their resources to successfully complete this epic project. George Pullman, who would later earn fame for designing and manufacturing the Pullman sleeper railway carriages, raised the Tremont House Hotel on Lake Street in 1861. With the help of contractors Eli and Smith, the Tremont House was raised 6 feet into the air to match the upward shifting street grade of Chicago. 6 stories high and made of bricks, the hotel was luxuriously appointed and took up about an acre of space. The raising of Tremont House was so gradual and inconspicuous that some of the guests staying there at the time, including a US senator and several VIPs, had no idea that 500 men were working under covered trenches to lift the hotel building on 5,000 jack screws. One patron wrote in bafflement that the front steps leading out of the hotel and onto the street outside were becoming steeper with every passing day. Another noted that this is incredible. Another noted that the hotel windows were several feet above his head when he checked out, whereas they'd been at eye level when he first arrived. As evidenced by primary sources, at least one building in Chicago was raised with the help of hydraulic lifts. This was the Franklin House on Franklin Street, which was raised by an engineer named John C. Lane. Being part of the Lane and Stratton Partnership of San Francisco, he had access to Californian hydraulic jacks, which were already being used to raise brick buildings in and around San Francisco in the early 1850s. The hydraulic machinery was shipped from San Francisco to Chicago, as Lane and Stratton were convinced that their method of raising buildings was cheaper and more effective than those currently in use. Not every building in Chicago went through the lifting process during the mid-19th century. Some of the hastily erected wooden homesteads that no longer fit with the rapidly growing and increasingly wealthy city were instead shifted to the suburbs and the outskirts. Old houses and shops with wooden frames that no longer had a place in the city proper were put on horse-drawn rollers and carried out to the edges of the city. They were replaced with new masonry blocks constructed to be in line with the latest grade. Over time, the sight of old, fully furnished, multi-story buildings being relocated on rollers became so common that these processions were considered to be no more than routine traffic. Sometimes entire rows of such wooden frame buildings were transported to the outskirts at the same time. On a visit to Chicago in 1868, a Scotsman named David McCrae noted that during his stay in the city, there were few days when he didn't encounter on the streets one or more houses being rolled to a new location. One day, he met as many as 9. His observations about his visit to the US were published in the Glasgow Herald and other newspapers and can now be found in the volume America Revisited and Men I Have Met. During the relocation process, the wooden frame buildings, fully furnished and intact, served the functions for which they had been originally constructed. A shopkeeper could keep his shop open and sell his merchandise en route to the new location to customers who had to climb in through a moving door. A family could begin dinner at one address and end their meal at another. Small brick buildings were also sometimes relocated, although this was relatively rare. A 2.5-story brick house owned by a man named John V. Farwell was moved from Madison Street to Monroe Street with the help of jack screws. Later, many other various brick buildings were rolled to various locations across Chicago with the help of tools such as maple and beech rollers, long intermediate needles, heavy string timbers, capstans, and windlasses. Though throughout the 2 decades when the razing of Chicago took place, life in the city continued as usual. Businesses rarely had to be closed down while streets and buildings were being lifted out of the mud. Disturbances to normal life were few and far between, allowing residents to come and go, shop and work, just as they would have done on any ordinary day of their life. Moreover, the lifting process helped boost the local economy by providing work for many young men in and around the city, as each worker could only operate 10 jack screws at a time. During the initial years, the spectacle drew thousands of people to the site whenever large buildings or city blocks were being raised. Sometimes on the final day of the lifting process, the people were allowed to walk among the jack screws at the old ground level. The razing of Chicago, a plan that would seem bold and daring for most cities even today, soon became the talk of the whole nation. For the people of 19th century Chicago, the enormous undertaking both solved a persistent problem and testified to the resourcefulness and resilience of their community. Since then, many historians and academics around the world have noted the incredible speed and thoroughness with which the city solved its seemingly insurmountable drainage and sewage problem within just 2 short decades. So I really hope you found that video interesting. I particularly found this fascinating. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Brand new videos several times a week. And as always, thank you for watching.
The guy that you just heard about racing Chicago, gave takes of how they raced Chicago and why they raced Chicago. Here's a visual of how they literally had done it. Here.
The jack screws were hand cranked beneath the buildings, and each one was turned at exactly the same time, raising the building with people still inside. Wooden supports were stacked beneath until it reached the new higher street level, and brand new foundations were constructed as the building remained suspended.
You see, the city was originally built on a swamp, meaning the streets were constantly flooded, and this caused disease to spread around the city.
So they raised the buildings away from the swamp, and Chicago still sits on those foundations to this day. The jacks.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, it's quite insane. And like the guy said in the previous video, it just was built very fast, or you could say too fast, so that they couldn't get the drainage. The city had a drainage problem, where it just ended up flooding the streets.
You mean they built it too fast the first time, or they built it too fast raising the buildings?
No, Chicago. The Chicago was kind of like had a drainage problem. The guy said in the previous video, and that's why everything was always flooding, and all the basements of every building was having water problems, like stagnant water over the place. And like he said,
yeah, see, they didn't build it. They didn't build it in the beginning like Venice.
No. Like I said, it just got built so fast. There was a problem with. There were some things that needed to be done, and they had to do it very fast, and they had to raise the buildings, and that was a really cool way of how they did it. I should think that is amazing.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, it would be great to see real video footage, but that was
and that's what's so great about way back then.
But then they said the people are still in their homes. Can you imagine, like, you're in your home and
yeah. Well, like that guy in the previous video, there was a senator in Chicago, and he was like amazed, like, wait, I came here, and then I can tell there's like a 6 cents so difference when I left the hotel. I was having something. Okay, it's just quite amazing.
or like they raise it and then you're like, oh, now I can see this. Because you're higher.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, oh, this is higher than it. I remember it was. Yes. Yes, indeed. Hmm. So, but like he said, some places were raised like 10 feet, and yeah, and what could have been.
Well, they can always raise the Venetian for Disney World if.
Yeah, but that costs money, which you need to convince some people to to build it and tell them like it's worth their while, because limestone is like 100 feet below the ground in some places.
By the way, my episode, I don't think when I presented it, we went over the grid because and I mentioned that Chicago has its own form, his own amazing feat and about raising the buildings and all that. New York was different. It was not built on the grid, and then they used the grid to make. That's how all the streets and the avenues and the streets and the skyscrapers, they're all correctly, like they're all in perfect alignment because of the grid.
Yes. Mhm. Correct. Let's see. We got what lies underneath Chicago, or we can go to this one, or we can just go one by one. So, what lies beneath the city of Chicago? Let's find out.
Be sure to like this video. The Windy City, the capital of the Midwest. Home to about 2.7 million people, it's the third largest city in the United States. Millions of tourists come here every year to see skyscrapers and attend the buzzing festivals. It has the second largest and oldest subway system in the country and some of the busiest railroad hubs. But what do we know about underground Chicago? There's a maze of tunnels, hidden passageways, and even secret rooms that once served as hideouts beneath its streets. And today we're going to delve into these mysterious underground layers and unravel what lies beneath Chicago. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel to see lots of exciting content. We are on the famous Lake Street, one of the main arterial roads of early Chicago. The city's first church, the first hotel, and the city tavern were built there. It was here on the corner of Market Street that one of the most significant events of the United States took place in 1860, when 10,000 people gathered in Wigwam Hall to nominate Abraham Lincoln for the presidency. But history is not only all around us, it's right under our feet. Wait, right under Lake Street? That's right, let's take a look. Like most of Chicago's busy roads, Lake Street has a composite pavement. It's like a layered cake. On top there's 5 to 7 centimeters, 1.5 to 2.7 inches of asphalt. Among other things, it serves as a protective coating for the underlaying layer. It absorbs most of the impact from vehicles and weather conditions. Underneath is a 15 to 20 centimeter, 6 to 7.8 inches thick concrete base that ensures the strength and stability of the entire structure. Let's dip down just below the pavement to a depth of up to 30 centimeters, 12 inches. This is where the ground should start, but no, we see some old boards that look like parquet flooring fragments. Where do they come from? Straight from the 19th century. Long before Chicago existed, the whole area was carved with trails. Trails helped indigenous people and the first settlers evade swamps and flooded lands. Then Chicago was founded. Its population grew, the city evolved, and the trails were used by countless farmers bringing their goods to the city. Naturally, during the rainy season, the old trails became a muddy mess. How did the people here cope with this? They built wooden alleys by putting wooden decks on top of the ground. In the 7 years from 1848 to 1855, almost $150,000 was spent on them. Today, that amount would equal to almost $5,500,000. At first, the idea seemed groundbreaking compared to dirt roads, which were falling apart quickly. The boardwalk seemed like a real relief. But then the problem began. The permanent humidity caused the wood to warp and rot. To prolong the life of the roads, drainage ditches were dug along the edges to drain the water and reduce the accumulation of dirt. But even with these measures, the wooden roads lasted only a couple of years. Soon, most of them became so inconvenient and dangerous that the authorities decided to build new roads right on top of them. Well, it's time for us to see what's further down there.
I gotta post something, Rocco.
Gas lines are typically buried between 30 and 61 centimeters, 12 to 24 inches deep. Telephone and internet cables are a little deeper, between 65 and 90 centimeters, 25 and 35 inches. These lines provide telephone and internet service to residential homes and offices. Though you won't see them as you stroll the streets of Chicago, you can rest assured that the damage to even one of these lines may entail far-reaching implications. If we look deeper at 90 to 122 centimeters, 36 to 48 inches, we will see major high-voltage power lines that feed city blocks. Deepest of all, 1.6 to 1.8 meters, 4 to 6 feet underground, are water mains. This depth protects them from freezing in winter. However, utilities aren't the only thing we find here. A few centimeters below, about 2 meters, 6.5 feet, beneath the ground, we can see a true engineering wonder. We're under Lake Street at the foundation of the building. At first glance, it looks like a typical foundation, nothing special. But it's the real wonder, because it was finished after the building had been built. Hard to believe? And yet, it's true. Imagine, it's the middle of the 19th century. At the time, the Chicago area was just above the level of neighboring Lake Michigan. There were virtually no drainage systems, and the city streets literally stood in water. The problem was so acute that foundation reinforcement alone wouldn't have worked. So what did the Chicago engineers decide to do? They decided to lift entire buildings, and then they'd build new foundations underneath them. So in 1858, Chicago became the first city in the world where a brick 4-story building was raised by as much as 1.8 meters, 6 feet. It wasn't done with cranes or any other advanced technology, but with 200 jacks. And if you think that this is a unique case, you're wrong. In Chicago, the same technique was used to lift an entire residential block. This happened 2 years later, in 1860, and it took a bit more jacks, namely 6,000. But the most amazing fact is that life in the block never stopped for a moment during the entire process. Just imagine, buyers continue to shop, mailmen deliver the morning paper, while the entire block is being slowly lifted off the ground and practically hanging in the air. After discovering such an extraordinary event, it's time to reveal another, no less interesting mystery of underground Chicago. Let's continue our journey downward. Are we in some sort of basement? No, it's an underground bar beneath the earth at a depth of around 2.5 meters, 8 feet. In the 1920s, Chicago was saturated with a web of such places, with a particularly large number of them in the city's downtown area. These were Chicago's speakeasies, places where alcohol was sold on the sly, and all conversations were held in an ambience of hiding and secrecy. Why? The 1920s in America were the days of prohibition, when the sale of alcohol was strictly forbidden. But bans only fueled interest, and so there were places where people could buy alcoholic beverages illegally. and each such hideout had its unique, inexpressible vibe. Let's take a look at the Green Door Tavern on Orleans Street. This is one of the oldest buildings in Chicago, built in 1872 after the fire. The Green Door was originally a humble grocery store, but during Prohibition, its owners didn't want to miss their chance and turned it into an underground bar. Note the name of the spot. It's not just a random name. During Prohibition, if the door of the establishment was painted in green, it was a sign that it was a speakeasy. Want to see more? How about the Gold Star Bar on W Division Street, which has been around since the 1920s? This place is still rumored to have ghosts, with many visitors claiming to have encountered unexplained phenomena in this old basement. Another famous speakeasy is Simon's Tavern in Chicago's Swedish neighborhood of Andersonsville. Once you descend into this underground bar, you'll find yourself aboard the fancy liner Normandy. And remember, more than a century ago, a cruise on this ship was not accessible for most people. So the real hard workers, the blue-collar workers who gathered here after work, could feel themselves in a real beau monde. But let's face it, there was always danger lurking around every carefree party at the speakeasy. Police raids could happen at any moment. So what helped? Secret tunnels. Some Chicago speakeasies were part of a complex system of tunnels that helped escape the police. We'll talk about these tunnels later. And now, ready for the next stop of our underground journey? Then let's go to a depth of 3.5 meters, 11.5 feet. Welcome to the Chicago Pedway, a system of underground passages and tunnels located literally beneath the feet of Chicagoans. It was created in 1951 and addressed a crucial issue: protecting people from the unbearable Chicago weather. Yes, Chicago weather can be harsh. And while a blizzard blows or heavy rain pours down on the surface, you're walking through dry and warm hallways connecting subway stations, offices, and stores. Not bad, right? It all started with a couple of tunnels between the stations of the red and blue lines. These were simply connecting hallways built for convenience. Over the years, however, the network has grown to encompass more than 40 blocks and 60 buildings, and its total length is now just over 8 kilometers, 5 miles. But Pedway doesn't have identical tunnels, as you might have imagined. Each section of the system is held by different owners. As a result, the design, lighting, and even temperature can change significantly as you walk through the tunnels. It's as if you were moving between different worlds. For example, the sections connecting the subway stations might look quite plain. However, in the hallway beneath Macy's, you will find stunning Victorian-style stained glass windows created in collaboration with the Stained Glass Museum. This is not just an underground passage, but it's a real art gallery. And that's not all. Pedway is a real city under the city. Here, you can visit cafes, stroll through the stores, and go to the cinema, or even check out the fitness center's pool. As you wander through this maze, you can take a peek at the Chicago Cultural Center with its iconic Tiffany dome, the largest in the world, or take the golden elevator to one of the art galleries. The Pedway itself can be considered the city's cultural heritage. Artists and designers exhibit their work here, hold pop-up performances, exhibitions, and installations. Graffiti thrives on the walls, while dead ends and little-used tunnel breaches turn into unique exhibition spaces. But not everything in the garden is rosy. With all the advantages of Pedway, its main problem remains: extreme complexity and lack of proper navigation. Do you want to spend hours looking for a way out? Then this is the place for you. The Pedway is notorious for being easy to get lost in. With over 200 entrances and exits, outdated signs, and no unified map navigation is a real challenge, even for locals, let alone tourists. The problem was best summarized by the Chicago Tribune. Bring some magic to Chicago's Pedway, or at least some maps. And while the mayor's office deals with navigation in the Pedway hallways, we're moving on. And soon we'll be in pitch black darkness. Where are we? Wires on the ground? Some letters? Is it a subway? No, it's a special network of freight tunnels.
Yeah, what did you think about learning about Pedway? That we can go dive deep and go diving deeper on the pedway in a moment after the video wraps up.
What I thought about the wetway?
The Chicago pedway.
Oh, I'm watching all this. It's fascinating.
Yeah. What did you think of learning about the Chicago pedway? Because we could go on a deeper dive when this video wraps up. Any questions about it? I mean, having the Chicago pedway kind of sounds like what I would do with my Epcot resort.
Definitely think we should explore this again another time and have a more deeper dive conversation.
Yeah, definitely good. Mm-hmm.
Or do you think that pedways would work at like Disney World?
Well, we got Utilidors.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
"12 meters, 40 feet beneath the city." Back in the middle of the last century, these tunnels stretched 95 kilometers, 60 miles under the city, and were a critical part of Chicago's infrastructure. And it all started in 1899 when the Illinois Telephone and Telegraph Company received permission from the city to dig tunnels for telephone cables. At the time, no one imagined that the tunnel's purpose would soon change radically. Just a few years later, in 1903, Illinois Telephone got permission to use the tunnels for freight transportation. And so the telephone company decided to retrofit the underground tunnels by adding railroad tracks for the transportation of cables and mail. That's when a real construction fever began under Chicago. Construction work was running around the clock, and on average, about 3.2 kilometers, 1.8 miles of tunnels were built per year. A typical tunnel was oval-shaped, 2.3 meters, 7.5 feet high, and 1.8 meters, 6 feet wide, with thick concrete walls. Larger segments used for main lines were up to 4.3 meters, 14 feet high, and 3.9 meters, 10 feet wide. Can you see the dumps of blue clay? Small freight cars, originally pulled by mules, were used to remove it. The same cars were also ingeniously used for ventilation inside the tunnels. Their movement forced air to circulate through the system. In their peak years in the 1930s and 1940s, the tunnels were used to deliver coal, mail, and goods directly into the basements of the buildings so that the city could avoid additional traffic congestion. Cargoes were taken from the tunnels to the surface or to the basements of the buildings via special elevator shafts. There were a lot of funny stories about these shafts. The thing is that the construction workers laid the tunnels with little or no consultation with the city agencies. They simply dug whatever they thought they should, so that eventually underground passages could come to the surface in practically every second house. Residents joked at the time, any day now, you might get a knock on your basement door with the news. Now you have freight service. Quite surprising, right? However, the tunnel boom gradually subsided. Underground freight cars eventually lost their competition for delivering goods to conventional trucks. The latter simply could carry more goods at a time, and the whole underground system began to lose its relevance. In 1959, freight transportation in the tunnels was permanently discontinued. The cars were scrapped, and the tunnels themselves began to be gradually forgotten. But in 1992, the tunnels under the city of Chicago came back into the spotlight. During construction work near the river, workers accidentally broke through one of the tunnels. Millions of gallons of water rushed into the underground network. The result? Hundreds of flooded buildings, damaged city infrastructure. The total damage amounted to $2 billion. Yes, the forgotten tunnel network continues to remind people of itself, and sometimes in a very dramatic way. And it's not just the floods. Long before their heyday, tunnels were already a favorite hideout for Chicago mafia thugs. Let's go back to the late 1920s, the Prohibition era. At the time, Chicago was a real criminal hub. The gang of one of the most notorious criminals of the 20th century, Al Capone, was ruling there. Together with his henchmen, he used a network of tunnels under the city for his criminal operations, smuggling of alcohol and money raids. Tunnels helped members of the mafia not only suddenly appear in the right places, but also instantly escape from the police by hiding under the city. This was highly convenient. It is believed that at the time, the tunnels could connect mafia centers to key city buildings, including municipal institutions, courthouse, city hall, and even assembly hall. In 1998, a Chicago electrician accidentally drilled through a wall in a basement of a steakhouse and discovered a hidden room just above the bar. It was later discovered that the room had a secret exit to an underground tunnel system. But who would need this tricky escape route? This story took place in Harry Caray's Italian steakhouse. The house was once a haven for the mafia. In the 20s, one of Al Capone's gang members, Frank Nitti, lived in the same building. He settled in an apartment on the 4th floor with his wife, whose family owned the building. A great hideout, you'll agree. The windows overlooked the city courthouse, keeping Nitti abreast of all the current events. And this is not a unique case. In some restaurants and buildings, you can still spot secret doors leading to underground mazes. Today, however, most of these tunnels are closed and sealed, and it's against the law to enter them. Only workers and city service representatives can go down into them. So if you want to fully explore Chicago's underground, keep in mind that only officials or construction workers are allowed to access some places. Wait, what's that loud rumbling sound below us? Let's dive a little deeper. We are in the subway at Clark Lake Station, about 20 meters under the ground, deep beneath Lake Street, where we started our journey. In front of you is a unique 3-level station, one of the biggest transport hubs in the city. It connects the surface level simultaneously to the Union Elevated Railroad line.
Ain't that a beautiful layout? Well, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
I just noticed that you were missing, and then I saw you there. I like this picture right here, don't you?
Yeah. That's very good.
It reminds me of that cat. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this is quite common.
Yeah. I mean, this guy did a video about New York City as well, about what lies underneath New York City, too. What do you find?
And the underground Milwaukee Dearborn line. Welcome to the Chicago Loop. At the turn of the 20th century, Chicago's public transportation system started to develop at breakneck speed. In 1892, the first elevated railroad service opened, known as the Chicago L. However, until the 1940s, all metro lines either ran at street level or were elevated on trestles. That's right, the subway as we know it now simply didn't exist at the time. Things changed in 1943. That year, the first subway line, the State Street Subway, which is now part of the Red Line, opened. The underground section finally made it possible for residents of the South and West Side districts to get downtown faster. And Chicago didn't stop there. In 1951, the Dearborn Street Subway Blue Line was completed, running under the river and parallel to State Street. The aforementioned freight tunnels were used for construction. It made the process much easier and allowed to save on materials. Over time, the Chicago L became one of the most sophisticated subway systems in America. However, it also had its share of dramatic stories. In 2002, Joseph Konopka, better known as Dr. Chaos, used the old tunnels under the Blue Line subway for his sinister plans. He used the abandoned underground rooms as a hideout where he stored deadly chemicals, sodium cyanide and potassium cyanide. Konopka would force open doors and change locks so he could have free access to the tunnels. He involved teenagers in his work to help him get access to more and more subway rooms, telling them that what he was doing was urban research. In the end, Konopka was arrested and the hidden substances were seized before he could implement his plan. No one ever found out what exactly the plan was. And when asked by the judge why he'd gone on his vandalism, Konopka replied, "I've several reasons, but no real good reason." Yes, the underground tunnels beneath Chicago are full of stories and legends. But if you think we've already made it to the lowest level, think again. We're going even deeper. At a depth of about 25 meters, 75 feet, the underground section of the multi-level highway runs underneath Chicago. We're on Lower Wacker Drive, the lowest level of Chicago's traffic artery. This underground tunnel was completed in 1926 and instantly became one of the city's major roadways. Initially, Lower Wacker was designed to relieve the street on the surface. All delivery services, garbage disposal, and other utility needs of the city were diverted here. Soon the public became aware of it and began using it as a free parking area for cars and bicycles. Then homeless people settled on the dead ends of the offshoots of Lower Wacker. And then came the racers. They hold their races at night away from prying eyes. Though they may not be seen, they're perfectly heard. Races gather crowds of spectators, and the screeching of tires could be heard up to the top floors of city buildings. One video posted on social media shows cars whizzing around a ring of fire, completely stopping traffic on the entire Lower Wacker. Well, maybe they just want to replicate some man rushes on his legendary tumbler in The Dark Knight, like for Hollywood movies. Here, Batman rushes on his legendary tumbler in The Dark Knight, chasing the Joker. And it's here where brothers Jake and Elwood swiftly escape from the police chase in The Blues Brothers. Yes, speeding down Lower Wacker is one hell of an adventure.
I just built a budgeting app with Base 44.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
But it's time to move on. We've almost reached our last stop. We go deeper and deeper until we're at the depth of around 90 meters, 295 feet. This underground infrastructure is something many people don't even know about. It's the system known as the Tunnel and Reservoir Plan, TARP, or simply deep tunnels. What tunnels again? Yes, but without them, Chicago wouldn't survive as a city. Billions of gallons of rainwater and sewage are collected here until they are treated and discharged. Remember the flooding problems Chicago has experienced since its founding? They started back in the 19th century and quickly became simply disastrous. Sewage was flowing directly into Lake Michigan, where the city's drinking water came from, and the flooding of the city led to disease epidemics. As a result, the city authorities implemented an idea unique in its scale. They turned the flow of Chicago River in the opposite direction, sending it toward the Mississippi River. But not even that helped. By the middle of the 20th century, it became clear that the problem had to be solved radically. So the idea of TARP was born, a colossal underground complex that would prevent flooding and protect the city from pollution. Gradually, starting in 1975, 4 huge tunnel systems were constructed. The tunnels themselves could reach a diameter of 10 meters, 33 feet. Construction took several decades, and by 2006, the tunnels could hold almost 9 billion liters, 1.97 billion gallons of water. And the system has not only helped prevent new floods, it's also greatly improved the environment. Thanks to TARP, rivers and lakes near Chicago have become cleaner, and dozens of fish and amphibian species have returned to them. But the project isn't finished yet. By 2029, Chicago Mayor's Office plans to build additional reservoirs that will allow the system to hold up to 64 billion liters, 17 billion gallons of water. This will make it one of the most efficient wastewater control systems in the world.
Let's see if we run into more about pedestrian tunnels here.
part of the Chicago Loop is a complex network of tunnels and overhead passages dating back to at least 1951. The city envisioned providing travelers shelter from the brutal weather above. Even though the network was built and functions in modern times, knowledge of its existence is widely overlooked. This is the Chicago Pedway, an extensive network of underground tunnels, ground-level concourses, and bridges connecting various buildings throughout over 40 blocks of downtown Chicago. Well, the exact mileage of the Pedway isn't publicly documented or standardized. The Guardian said that its layout is more of a maze than a grid, estimated to constitute around 5 miles of passages. But how exactly did the Pedway come to be? Why didn't the city create an official map until 1980? And what will you discover by exploring Chicago's underworld? Stay tuned to find out, as today we discover the history of Chicago's Pedway. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History.
I got a story coming from where I come from, in Indiana. I took the train to the Millennium Station. Now that image you saw there just seconds ago of being at the Millennium Station here. Connects to the Pedway. So,
Pedway. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Considerably different from the city we know it as today. At the crossroads of American rails and canals, its booming economic growth attracted people from across the world, resulting in a peak population of 3.6 million citizens. Meaning back then, the city had nearly 1 million more citizens than it does now. Furthermore, the Windy City was highly centralized, as the majority of businesses and industry were geographically centered in a relatively small area, an area only made more crowded by city planners who were sure to make it accessible from far and wide. For context, Union Station opened in 1925, bringing in travelers from other parts of the state and beyond. The L served the greater city outskirts, and then Chicago's first subway opened in 1943 under Claiborne, Division, and State Street, followed by a second line under Dearborn Street in 1951. And it was that second subway line that ultimately gave birth to the concept of the Pedway. The idea was pushed forward by a man named Joseph Brimberg, a Polish native and student of accounting. His path to America was very turbulent. You see, when Germany invaded Poland during the Second World War, Joseph survived by convincing the Russian army officials to take him on as an accountant. In the meantime, his home had been set afire by Germans, and ultimately, his entire family was lost. After the war, Joseph married, moved to Chicago in 1951, and attended Northwestern University, before ultimately serving as chief financial officer of commercial retail specialists. And it was in this capacity that Joseph helped to develop the Chicago Pedway system in the process. Although I should clarify that there are two schools of thought on the topic. Some historians claim that the origins of the Pedway date all the way back to 1897, when architect Louis Sullivan designed an ornamental bridge from the Loop L to the Mayer department store at 1 South State Street, sparking controversy as the idea of direct access to shopping centers from public transit raised accusations and reasonable questions about potential nepotism. But the greater consensus would agree that the Chicago Pedway system wasn't initially part of a grand plan, but rather it evolved over time. Its development was more of an organic process rather than a preconceived, coordinated initiative, which is perhaps why the final result is so unintuitive and even unknown. With that in mind, the oldest section of the Pedway consists of the passage between State and Dearborn Street. These corridors connect the transit authority's Red Line and Blue Line stations at Washington and Lake Streets, as well as trains servicing Jackson Street. They were constructed alongside the subway system, and during the Second World War, the process didn't go smoothly, with the Blue Line section beneath Dearborn Street facing interruptions due to rationing. Nonetheless, the 2 mezzanine connector tunnels were opened.
Websites your competitors don't want you to know, part 2. All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly.
Creating a link from the red line under State Street to the sidewalk of Dearborn Street. Construction has been opportunistic and ongoing since then, most notably expanding after the transit planning study, Chicago Central area in 1968, and then the introduction of the Chicago 21 plan in 1973. Even so, the effort has always seemed to be something of a side thought, as navigating these tunnels is said to be difficult for locals and nearly impossible for tourists. One issue is that the nearly 50 entrances all look different and are only indicated by a subtle plaque featuring a compass. However, once inside, the maps are not always available. Then, in some cases, the tunnels re-emerge at street level, leaving commuters to basically hunt out the next entrance. One reporter from Curbed, who had explored the network, advised to simply follow paths such as escalators that lead down, and somewhat magically perhaps, once below, it's entirely possible to walk across the entire loop without ever needing to go outside. You'll also come across some magnificent sites along the way, sites such as artwork and historical exhibits, not to mention sections of the pedway which are illuminated with modern lighting and design features. There's even an underground swimming pool offered by LA Fitness. Tunnels leading to City Hall will allow you to admire the building's vaulted cellar, which is ornate and stunning. From there, you can make your way to the city's culture center, where the so-called Golden Elevator will take you up from the tunnels below to the world's largest Tiffany Dome, which also happens to be the second commissioned by the Grand Army of the Republic when it was built all the way back in 1895. There's also an amazing stained glass collection on the basement floor of Macy's. All of this is the type of contrast I love so much about Chicago culture. Tunnels, which are created for the common worker, can lead you to places architecturally fit for royalty. But don't get me wrong, the pedway has something for every Chicagoan. There's also contemporary art, such as a mural by the students of the Art Institute dedicated to Chance the Rapper, yet another Chicago local who became a global celebrity. However, if we have a look at some of the entrances, like those in the vicinity of Millennium Station, we'll find that the network also has its more gritty side. Some of the decorations are comically bad, with brown bulge that lines beige walls in the vicinity of the Illinois Center. These concerns are not unfounded, as the division of responsibility between private owners and the city has made it unclear as to who's responsible for security. Other issues are caused by access, as passages run through many privately owned buildings. Every owner is entitled to declare their own opening hours, gating off the pedway entirely when they're closed. Some businesses might elect to leave their passage open all night, whereas others revoke access in the early evening. Finally, the pedway is not handicapped friendly, making the city hesitant to invest in the system, as they do not have authority to force private buildings to comply with the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, unless they are doing some remodeling already. And hence, it's here that the reality conflicts with concept, to the point that the creation of a massive underground pedestrian walkway network in Chicago might simply be impossible. There is something very special about underground tunnel networks, and Chicago has had a very long history of utilizing them in unprecedented ways. Although the complications arising from the mix of the pedway system between private and public owners makes progress seem impossible, I'm reminded of the lost freight tunnel system from the turn of the 20th century, a case where a private company managed to construct and operate a network of tunnels over 60 miles long, despite some very similar complications. Those tunnels were also connected to both private and public spaces, and have proven to be quite useful, even after they were abandoned, as these days they serve as a wonderful place to run phone cables and power lines. I'd also say that it's assuring that Chicago isn't giving up on the pedway concept just yet, as nonprofits and the city alike have put forth proposals to improve navigation with comprehensive signage, and encourage the public to explore the system by establishing the space as a center of art and culture. So perhaps Chicago will prevail. I know I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
if you wanted to see somebody walking through the headways, here's a list of videos of that you can find on YouTube here. There's a video from 40-minute video and a hour and 11-minute video here of walking through the headways. Let's click on one just for a moment. Watching it up here. That's what you can see on the ground. And that is a preview of the headways. You want to know what's in the? You want to know about the Chicago Hole? You've asked me 7 weeks ago. I will, because Florent asked me about the hole in Chicago. And I suppose I did find out it was being developed. So, got a video here that was uploaded 4 weeks ago. So here's an update on possible lab.
For the better part of 2 decades, this abandoned site served as the only relic of what would have been the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. A $500 million gamble that the 2008 financial crisis turned into Chicago's most expensive piece of nothing. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The ground beneath it, around that hole, might be the single most historically significant patch of earth in the entire American Midwest. For every generation that touched it tried to build something bigger than the last. And the story of why reads like Chicago's biography. So how does a city that's reinvented itself more times than almost any other in the world end up with a hole at its most prized address? And what does that hole tell us about everything that came before it? Stay tuned to find out as we explore the history of Chicago's lakefront hole. I'm your host, Ryan Sokesh, and you're watching It's History. To understand why this particular patch of ground matters so much, we have to go back, way back, to before there was a city called Chicago at all. The history of who founded Chicago is highly contested, if not controversial in modern times. But as it just so happens, everything started at the north bank of the Chicago River. Modern accounts reference this area as the site where a fur trader, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sabot, please correct my pronunciation in the comments if you wish, established the settlement that became Chicago in 1790. And there is some credence to that idea. For example, in 1779, a British colonel recorded DuSable as living at the mouth of the river. Whereas in 1790, Hayward Journal recorded that supplies were bought from DuSable's house. And perhaps most interesting is that in 1800, the DuSable homestead was sold to another trader from Quebec, Jean Lalime, in the presence of witness John Kenzie for 6,000 liers. It's strange to consider that these guys were using a European currency, but many of the traders were from the French-Canadian territory, and French culture and language were still defining the area. The bill of sale included the physical structure, but not the land itself. You see, around that time, the area was still the Northwest Territory, and there was no local municipal government in place, implying this sale was done under the order of a process called witness of standing, where a seller, buyer, and witness sign a deal in the presence of a notary and then send a copy of that transaction to the nearest American office of the Recorder of Deeds, in this case, Wayne County, Detroit. With that in mind, it was actually a major stroke of luck that this particular document was sent out of state, because when the entire city burned down in Great Fire of 71, it would have certainly been lost, and we wouldn't even have known this part of the story. Anyhow, DeSable was thought to have liquidated his estate in his 50s to spend out the rest of his days in Missouri, which was then still a part of Spanish Louisiana. Some accounts suggest that he was commissioned by a colonial governor to operate a ferry across the Missouri River and spent the rest of his days with his children and grandchildren. Though this is quite speculative and no one knows for sure where DeSable was laid to rest. Some historians have even called the origin story largely fictitious. Still, one thing is for certain. At minimum, he was a part of the butterfly effect that became Chicago. In the meantime, the aforementioned John Kinsey was on the rise. He had political favor with local tribes since his skills as a silversmith were highly coveted by those communities. Furthermore, he was hell-bent on dominating the region's fur trade, and by 1804, he managed to acquire the deed to a trading estate near the mouth of the Chicago River from Jean Boulain. So to summarize, the settlement was started by DeSable, bought by Jean, and then taken over by John. Many suspect there to have been shady aspects to this deal, though, since the two men had such a strained relationship that in the years to follow, Lime would shoot Kinsey in the shoulder, and in turn, Kinsey ended Lime's life by stabbing him. From that point forward, Americans have passionately debated who was the town's true founding father. Though for the purpose of this video, my point in discussing it really boils down to the fact that regardless of who started that settlement that became Chicago, the city's interests were always hyper-focused at the junction where the river met the lake, a place where canoe-based trade routes laid the path to the industrial-scale industries that would come a century later. By 1818, Illinois had become the 21st state in the Union. It had already enjoyed a healthy economic rise thanks to the natural waterways running deep throughout the interior plains, as far north as Hudson Bay and as far south as New Orleans. So as the fur trade evolved into the movement of things like textiles, alcohol, and salt, a new powerful connection was made possible east via the Erie Canal. This accomplishment made Chicago the heart of the young country in many ways. So when the railroads arrived, the city was primed. Business along the waterfront exploded. As we've discussed in previous videos, grain was the primary commodity, and as stock traders artificially manipulated prices by hoarding the supply, what many refer to as Chicago's first skyscrapers, grain silos, rose along the riverfront. To accommodate further growth, then Mayor William B. Ogden worked with his lawyer, Abraham Lincoln, to establish the Chicago Dock and Canal Company. That same year, the entire 40 acres of riverfront, including the area now known as DeSable Park, was acquired by the new company. By mid-century, they dug out the Ogden Slip to allow cargo ships to transfer freight directly to trains. By the turn of the century, rail lines ran on both sides of the waterway, with the Illinois Central Depot on the south, the Wells Depot to the north. And Chicago was also working on its appearance, as the area had been somewhat beautified for the world's Columbian Expedition, an event where the engineering marvel known as the Chicago Harbor Lighthouse was unveiled. And it should be noted that this was only the beginning. Chicago was planning a massive transformation. By now, the local elite had amassed unimaginable wealth and power, and so they were considering how to symbolically transform Chicago's image. Hence, the Commercial Club of Chicago commissioned Daniel Burnham and Edward Bennett to craft the Plan of Chicago. This document's key principles revolve around reorganizing the industrial harbor infrastructure, making the lakefront publicly accessible, and resolving the chaotic reality of rail yards and residential areas entwined. In other words, these guys sought to create the New London, New Vienna. The plan verges on being utopian. It depicts the area around the Ogden Slip as redesigned with ocean liner-sized slips, parks, and boulevards. Indeed, the new concept was radically different from the reality of train yards, smoke, and ship congestion, and many believed it wasn't possible. Although some aspects of this plans were realized in the years to follow, they couldn't pull everything off. Historic maps from 1920 suggest that the jetty near the Ogden Slip was still a gritty place. It had a motor coach line, and old aerial photos show a variety of industrial buildings on the land there. Meanwhile, the North Pier was the Q terminal, a structure of almost incomprehensible scale for its time. This facility was 120 feet wide, 1,380 feet long, and 7 stories tall. It contained a total of 23 acres of floor space beneath a single roof, making it, at the time, the largest building of its kind in the world. And not unlike that old trading post DeSable established in the same area centuries prior, its genius laid in its physical position. Sitting at the junction of the Chicago River and Lake Michigan, this warehouse threaded the city's underground freight loops and surface lines simultaneously. What's more, the terminal was built at the precise point where the water and rail met. So, in practice, steamers arrived from Lake Michigan as trains pulled in from prairie lands beyond. Both discharged their cargo directly into the building without interruption. With that, James A. Pugh had built more than a warehouse. He had built a system, one that reached farm fields to the consumer's door, eliminating every middleman in between. And although city planners had continued to beautify the lakefront with more regal features, such as the ballroom at Municipal Pier, now known as Navy Pier, they were still far from the vision that the plan of Chicago had called for. Let's face it, the city wasn't pretty. You had freight trains rumbling through downtown, smokestacks polluting the waterfront, and ships clogging up every waterway in the area. And that was a problem, since the elite class wanted to present their home as a status symbol to the rest of the world. To do that, they needed culture. Though the irony here is priceless, since these were often the owners of the very same companies that blocked the plan's implementation. You see, there was one fact that they just couldn't avoid. For better or worse, Chicago, from its first documented settler, was economically centered on where the river met the lake. But as any Chicagoan now knows, that would not remain the case forever. And the vision of Daniel Burnham would be realized. Two things aligned: the rise of trucking, and later, gentrification. Merchandise Mart was built in 1930, and it absorbed the wholesale exhibition function entirely. With that, Q Terminal was demoted to a pure warehousing role almost overnight. Its highest commercial purpose had already been stripped away before mid-century. Then, the state authorized a deep water port at Lake Calumet, 20 miles south of the city center, effectively putting warehouses along the slip and along the riverfront out of business. At the same time, rail freight declined as trucking offered more flexibility and lower overhead. And since freight tracks were not desirable in the lens of the grand plan, the city itself pushed to accelerate this transition. So by the 1960s, infrastructure had changed, and the Ogden Slip area, as well as the Inner Harbor, were caught in prolonged decline. The freight that had once justified infrastructure there was gone or on its way out. Buildings were aging, underutilized, and expensive to maintain. And thus, without any active commercial purpose, major urban decay set in. After just a few years of this blight, the first major step towards gentrifying the district occurred with the construction of Lake Point Tower. With Navy Pier at its east, Jane Addams Memorial Park to its north, and the then soon-to-rise River District to the west, developers saw what almost no one else could. They recognized that the gritty industrial lakefront would one day become some of the most coveted real estate in the world. And so in 1965, they rolled the dice, and construction began on one of the tallest apartment buildings in the world back then. Before and after photos of the building's site suggest that nothing major was demolished to make way. However, many industrial buildings...
That building on the left side of the canal, I believe is apartment building.
buildings in the vicinity were eventually lost to the road ramps of Lakeshore Drive. Curiously, during construction, the building served a dual purpose as a striking residential skyscraper and as a giant real-world testing station for structural engineering. Instruments embedded throughout the building and a seismograph mounted at the tower's top would measure how the structure responded to wind, whether it swayed under gusts or steady pressure, and how quickly it rebounded. The goal wasn't to verify safety, but to confirm in the real world what engineers could previously only theorize in a lab. These results mattered because its 3 curved Y-shaped wings, designed to withstand the extreme winds of Lake Michigan, later served as inspiration for the Burj Khalifa, the current tallest building in the world. Completed in 1968, Lake Point Tower is 645 feet tall, has 900 units, parking for 700 cars, penthouse, and views unlike anything else in Chicago. Now, although it doesn't seem like a big deal from today's perspective, this tower has had a powerful impact on defining Chicago as a global city and deserves some recognition. Over the years, some major American public figures have called the tower home. For starters, it was basically endorsed by the celebrity class from the very beginning. Dolly Parton and Tom Selleck were known to stay there during their visits to Chicago. In the 1980s, Alice Cooper lived there while stepping away from LA. Apparently, he remarked that half of the Chicago Cubs also lived in the building at the time. A claim which, if true, is also a powerful cultural notion for Chicagoans from the northern part of the city. But the list goes on. Athletes like Scottie Pippen and Sammy Sosa were reported to own units in the building. And finally, Tom Cruise was also spotted there somewhat frequently as well. This celebrity status matters to a city's broader perception, especially when it becomes amplified by the media. Case in point, Hollywood productions began to feature the tower films. From exterior shots in 86's Raw Deal, featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, to Sandra Bullock's appearance in While You Were Sleeping, and of course there was Meet the Parents at the turn of the 21st century. So why does this even matter? Well, for all their faults, high-status media figures and celebrities are used to craft the public perception. You consume big names as entertainment, but in the end, it's mostly marketing. It's influence, it works. Anecdotally here, my own mother would take me urban exploring around that bend in Lakeshore Drive in the early 1990s, which might also reveal to you where I developed my type of curiosities, but that's beyond the point. I specifically remember her saying, "Ryan, this area around Navy Pier was always considered to be seedy. Like it's the type of place that you weren't supposed to visit, but now it's in the movies." And I don't think she was the only one who had that impression. By 1985, a new master plan called for City Front Center to be developed along 50 acres of decaying industrial and port facilities. As for the Pew Terminal, that building was renovated between 88 and 89. And it was converted into a retail center office complex, which was called North Pier, offering restaurants and shops where steamers and freight trains had once discharged cargo directly into the building. Though the retail experiment failed when Navy Pier was massively redeveloped in 95, drawing foot traffic away and fierce competition. Even so, step by step, the entire area transformed into a place for the public, the type of place where tourists flocked. And so I might even go as far as saying that this is the type of place that Daniel Burnham imagined when crafting his plan, bringing us back to the topic of that bizarre-looking circular hole. In the new millennium, Chicago was ready to take the lakefront gentrification process to an entirely new level by doing what it's always done best, reclaiming the title of the world's tallest building. In this case, the Chicago Spire. Proposed in 2005 by Irish developer Garrett Byrne and later taken over by Santiago Calatrava, one of the world's most celebrated architects, the tower was designed to rise 2,000 feet into the sky. This twisting, tapering drill bit design would have made the spire one of the most recognizable structures on Earth, which perhaps would have been a poetic conclusion to everything that came before it. DeSable had recognized the value of that bend in the shore, its trading post. Pew had industrialized it into the largest warehouse on the planet, whereas the developers of Lake Point Tower had gambled on it when no one else would. And now it was to be crowned with something that would have even made Burnham pots. And so ground was broken in 2007. As the caissons went in, it seemed like Chicago's next chapter was upon us. But then a financial crisis hit. Construction stopped almost immediately. It never resumed. The developers just walked away. And although the city pursued legal remedies, years passed and foundation slowly filled in with groundwater. The hull itself was roughly 110 feet deep, 75 feet across, and for nearly 2 decades served as an almost symbolic throwback to what the area once was, blighted. The hull was eventually filled in 2023, and the site was redeveloped into a less sensational residential complex. So that's the story of Chicago's lost Spire Hull. I really hope you liked it, and if you want to take a deeper dive into many of the other locations discussed today, don't forget to check out our Chicago History playlist by clicking right here. Also, if you've got an episode idea, please let me know in the comments section below, or feel free to commission your own episode by joining our members community. I'll check that about once a month, and we'll see where it goes. Otherwise, as always, this is Ryan Socash, signing off.
Now, if you stayed around for this long, I can show you a little hint of one of my projects. You know that this is a special episode. This is calculated. Well, we know I'm part of BFP Imagineering, and right behind me is one of the concepts right behind me. I present to you some of the imageries or concepts of the Epcot Fort. Here is a picture of the underground city beneath the Epcot Resort. We call it the Epcot Park. This here stores your meat, frozen meat, for long periods of time. You can grow strawberries down here. You could grow apples. You can grow blueberries. And you can also grow papayas. And you could grow pepper plants as well. It's a self-sufficient underground city with a actual living city above as well. But yeah, like I said, a self-sufficient. Okay, what I'm saying is I am working on a underground, what can I say? A underground food source for the above ground um, Epcot Resort that I'm working on. And if something drastically very bad happens, I have a concept as I started out with just a underground city. I will get back to this some other time. A bit of good night and somehow late budget. So, an almond tree, pea plants, peanuts, peanut plant grown space, and cho looks like floor arrangements, beautiful looking. Wheat. So like living with the land, but snakeboard, cultivation, winged beans, cotton, sunflower seeds, sunflowers. I mean, in sunflowers. Maybe get beets, 9-pound beet cultivation, which those actually looks like bigger than 9 pounds. And those are way bigger than just your typical 9-pound melon. Maybe the one over to the left of the big lemon there at the very front. Maybe 9 pounds. I have seen what they grown and living in the land. They're pretty big. You could say pomelo fruit, dragon fruit, and Mickey shaped cucumbers. Pumpkins, even jackfruits. Jackfruits, delicious, very delicious. If you have never tried them, very delicious. Rice, a beautiful giant rice field underground. Yeah. There is a power source, and that, by the way, that is a projection screen, folks, of just seeing it above ground. Banana growing facility. Maybe phonics towers. There's another projection screen there. This is the another thing of cucumbers, I guess. No, wait. Those are eggplants. These are. So I guess we have regular cucumbers, and then you got baby cucumbers. Great. Cantaloupes. We got You can grow cantaloupes. Let's see what cantaloupes. Watermelons. Massive watermelons. Soybeans. That are very high protein. Potatoes. Tomatoes. Potato, tomato. Tomato, potato. Yes. I mean, I could see this possibly being done. There's a way to grow things. Because, I mean, I do not want to, I mean, I'm kind of like a scuffler of like trying to make as much of space as possible. Make use of my space as much as possible. I'm quite stupid. Here's some leafy greens. I mean, I got a lot of things being grown on leaf here, and there's a power source for all this. As you can tell, I really had a lot of fun bringing these. They're really amazing. They are very fascinating. I did tell that I have imagination of like how to serve at least almost 10,000 people, and these are why it's why these are very like huge vertical farms, very huge vertical farms. I can tell you it could be done. It's kind of quite hard to build in Florida, as you can tell there. Maybe an average human is 5 to 6 feet tall between there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's space between the half. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 120 or 130 feet tall ceilings, let's just say, or maximum 140 feet tall ceilings. If you want to know in detail what this is all about, it's food production, agricultural levels, vertical farming, hydroponics, aeroponics towers. Multiple levels are dedicated to stacked vertical farming using high efficiency LED grow lights, tuned spectrums. These produce high yield staples like leafy greens, tomatoes, potatoes, high protein soybeans, and I went more beyond high protein soybeans, tomatoes, and potatoes. As we just saw minutes ago. And here is a facility that maintains the farming below ground. Active heat is managed by recycling waste heat from life support systems, keeping the internal environment at constant 22 Celsius, which is equated to 72 degrees Celsius. And that's like a scene of that being demonstrated right here. Active heat is managed by recycling waste heat from fusion power, which is fusion power is always hasn't been done yet. I can say, but it is a waste to energy power. Still in development. It's a waste to energy reactor and the life support systems, keeping the internal environment at a constant 22 Celsius, which is 72 degrees Celsius. So, as I believe that is the fusion power being. And it's just geothermal control. Geothermal chemical regulation is passive heat exchange with deep rock stratum provides a stable temperature baseline. The active heat is managed by recycling waste heat and from the fusion power of the waste energy reactor, which is heat and life support systems, keeping the internal environment at a constant 22 Celsius and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is a water recycling facility. There's another significant recycling facility. The water from the condensation atmospheric dehumidification is also collected and recycled. Here's a scene of that the water has been 100% recycled and it's ready for consumption. Testing with monitors and tube that is monitoring the lives of the bats. Another thing about them. Here's the water that needs to be recycled, and here's the clean water. or there might be the black water toilets are chemically and UV purified, reverse osmosis filtered, and recycled into potable water. Water from the condensation of atmospheric dehumidification is also collected and recycled. From, as I said, process can come from here. It's filtrated and it's potable water. We call this facility the gray water CO2 loss. The water management advanced closed loops recycling complex, which is the featuring of zero loss water system. All gray water showers and sinks and are chemically and UV purified, reverse osmosis filtered, and recycled into potable water. Water from condensation, atmospheric dehumidification is also collected and recycled. There's an advanced closed loop recycling complex featuring zero loss water system. As you can tell, I made many. I'm showing many pictures of what that facility could be, how it could work. As an example, here's a chemical scrubber for making life easier for everybody living at the Epcot Resort above ground, which is a multi-stage filtration handling all the particulates and chemical contaminants, including nuclear fallout and biological hazards, and CBRN, whatever that is, which is included in the wording with the nuclear fallout text. Air pressure is maintained slightly above the external pressure to prevent ingress of contaminants. And that is that scene right here. So if you want to know what the Epcot Arc is, which is a underground facility, what it is a emergency plan other than outside of just growing food sources and efficiencies for the top ground living. It is also a worst case scenario of survival of humanity in case there was ever a disaster to happen. This is the subterranean survival complex. And with that being said, I will end the show. It was a good show. will sign out right now, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye. 3, 2, 1. See you later. Goodbye. Till next.